Yes, I'm glad my room has been safe and sound. Nothing will change this fact in 1,000,000 years. I know I shouldn't, but... why not? Yeah? Yeah, it happened again. So, do I have explosion insurance? Hello? Ah, damn it. Well, it's good to be back. Unfortunately, my room seems to have, the world's shortest expiration date, but I'm sure I can live with that. This has been a long old year, and I, for one, will be glad to put it behind us. So, what have I been doing this year? Well, I got to help out make several animatics, including this long 5-minute one that I did for university. I helped out on the animation of a student film. I graduated university, and I still feel vastly underqualified for everything I want to do. And I got to do retail work for the first time. Yay! But that's enough about me. Let's get talking about all the cool stuff that I've watched this year. Okay, first up on the list is To Be Hero X. Man, this is one of the few things that I have been so excited to see for years now. Ever since that first teaser came out with X kind of... it was so cool even back then. X, basically just showing his stuff and basically having the powers to switch the art style and basically seeming to be an omniscient god was so sick, and it got me so hyped for this show. And oh my god, it's an anthology! It's an anthology show! Yeah! I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think that the way they plot this story out is fascinating. I think in large part this is down to almost, it's not exactly reverse chronological, but the way that we initially start so close to the end of the story, and then we get to see all of these different components which all build up and layer the hero politics, the different characters, the trust system. It all makes for this really interesting watch where we get to see how this world has evolved and changed due to the development of heroes. I know that a lot of people seem to like the first arc the most. I found it kind of it was good, and I think it was the perfect place to start the story, but I think that the way all the other stories interconnect just kind of appeals to me on an even deeper level. I think that Ling Ling was fun. Yang Chen was a really interesting force where he starts out kind of in a similar position where he's this good kid with a good heart, but then rather than improving, he just gets worse and worse and manipulated further until he becomes a tool similar to how characters like Ghostblade and Dragon Boy do. And man, there's so many interesting characters in this show. I think that if I had to pick a favourite, I'm gonna be boring and just say X. X and Ahu's dynamic in the last few episodes is absolutely phenomenal considering their comparative lack of screen time compared to some of the other characters. X just has this aura and presentation to him which just makes him so damn cool. I love how he's simultaneously exploiting the system while clearly wanting it to be abolished in some way. He is kind of the antithesis to the sneaking around and the internal politicking of all of these different hero groups. He is purely there to help, and I think that the way he is built up as this enigmatic mystery who is secretly a guy with just a good heart is fascinating, and I really want to see more of him. I do think that the story is going to suffer if we don't get a season 2. It's gonna feel so underwhelming after so much wonderful, beautiful setup and payoff in this first season, that I do think my estimation of the story would go down if we don't get to see how this tournament plays out. Another thing I really like about this show is, oh man, I know it's a small moment, but I find it so fucking cool. The scene of Johnny and Ghostblade just chatting in the car. Ghostblade being this sort of stoic, silent hero, and in his point of view, he's just like desperately trying to avoid talking to Johnny and shut him up. And then in Johnny's point of view is this deeply emotional scene where he's like, damn, you remind me of my father. You're helping me through all of my hardships, Ghostblade. You're so cool. It's so fucking good. And the comedy in this show is pretty solid most of the time. I think that if I had to give one critique, 2B Hero X struggles a bit when it comes to making fights engaging. Like, they look absolutely amazing, but I'm talking more on a thematic and kind of character conflict level, where it just doesn't feel like they can fully make the most of the conflict. The characters don't always have conflicting personalities or ideals. It often boils down to, oh, the villain has taken fear, and the hero has to beat them, and I don't know, I just wish that they developed that a little bit more, but fingers crossed that they can improve this further in Season 2. Alright, next up is a game that I finished very recently, Ghost Trick. Ghost Trick is so much fun. I had an absolute blast with this, but before I get into that, I do want to have some backstory of how long it took me to play this game, because every time I tried to play it, it would just break on my laptop. I don't know what it is, but something about the Steam port of Ghost Trick did not want to work on my laptop. It didn't recognize my controller, it would crash out on me, but I finally got to play it on my PC, and man, it was so much fun. I absolutely loved it. The character art, absolutely beautiful. It's a monument of great art design. I love how theatrical it has, how theatrical it is, I suppose. The way that spotlights kind of come onto characters as they're giving kind of monologues, it feels like a stage play at times, and that's really cool. I don't know really what to say about it. I've got a nice review on it, which summarizes most of my thoughts, but I guess put short, the writing is really good. Sissel and Lynn have this really fun dynamic where it's similar to Phoenix and Maya in Ace Attorney, where one of them's the straight man and the other's the kind of silly girl. And yeah, they're just so fun and quirky. And Yomiel as a villain is so interesting. I think that the way in which he has these different mannerisms to Sissel, and the way he kind of reanimates himself after getting shot, oh, that was so cool. The writing's lovely, and there was so many twists and turns that it just kept me guessing. Like, I suspected certain things, like Ray having an ulterior motive, and the time limit being kind of bogus. Like, I suspected certain things for a while, but it was so cool to see it all combined together into this absolutely wonderful game. Next up is Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4. Man, when this year was first coming around, I thought, man, I am not going to get obsessed with Deltarune again like I did with Chapter 2. Boy, was I wrong. I absolutely adored these chapters. Like, I thought I wouldn't get sucked back into the Delta hole of theories, analysis, and Toby Fox brain rot, basically. But these chapters did such a good job. I played both of them the night they released, and God, I recorded my reaction, and just in general, I forgot how much I enjoy Toby Fox's writing and his sensibilities and everything about his storytelling. Tenor appearing in those first 10-20 minutes was genuinely the most bizarre experience I've had in a while. I don't think I saw anyone predict the idea that he would be pre-rendered kind of 3D graphics, but oh my goodness, it's such a Toby Fox thing to do, and I love it. And just in general, Chapter 3 has this immense feeling of nostalgia about it. The minigames remind me a bit of the minigames that you would play in things like Club Penguin, where, especially the kitchen one, where you're sort of throwing food. There's something so fascinating about how Toby Fox uses nostalgia as this kind of vessel to explore feelings of the past, feelings of belonging. There's so much there. I think that especially in how Susie wants simultaneously to both live in the past but also not be consumed by it, that's really interesting to me. A lot of the characters seem to fall on this sort of spectrum of how much do they want to live in the past. And Susie in some ways wants to escape the past, and she likes the escapism of the dark world, but then there's also questions of okay, how healthy is that? And I don't think that Toby Fox is saying that it's wrong to want escapism, because it's clear that characters like Ralsei are important and shouldn't just be seen as objects to be abandoned. One thing I am sad I didn't get to experience on my first playthrough was the sword route, but the experience I had of piecing together what little information I could find on Reddit in the first few days, that was crazy. It was like the weird route all over again, where it's this sort of thing of, there's this weird sort of route thing that you can do in this new chapter where you can kill a bunch of enemies and a little pixelated Chris can come out of the screen and you can get the Shadow Mantle. This is the kind of rumor mill stuff that you'd hear about in playgrounds with Mew on the truck and stuff, and it's so cool. And oh man, the night too, that was crazy. I thought it was like a mini Titan at first. If I can, I'll show the recording of me first finding the fight, because that was crazy. Oh! Oh! What the fuck? What was that? Oh! What the fuck? Is that a Titan? Whoa. Whoa. What is that? What? Excuse me? What? And yeah, I have not tried to beat the night fight, but maybe I will sooner or later. And then there was Chapter 4. Chapter 4 was awesome. It said so much about storytelling, so much about Susie and Ralsei, and Gerson. Old man Gerson. God, what a fascinating character. He really feels like the thesis of Deltarune's discussion around prophecy. Because I think that there's this sort of consistent question of how closely do we need to go with the prophecy? Because in many ways, a lot of the lines that Gerson is giving is about adaptation, about how do we take a same story and similar elements and how do we construct it and walk that path in a way that feels right to us. The Tea Party with him has this wonderful line about how Susie doesn't have a story poisoned by irony or doubt. She is earnest, and that is what makes her special. And I think that, broadly speaking, Gerson feels like a mouthpiece of Toby Fox to say, this is what I love about storytelling. It felt tied to his own experiences with creation, but also his own experiences seeing what the fandom has created. This constant idea of taking things you love and making them your own. Taking inspiration from the past in order to inform the future of storytelling. And I think that is the core of what Gerson is saying. It's not necessarily that the ending can be entirely subverted. It's this nugget of you can read between the lines. You can twist and reinterpret and rework things to fit how you want to see this story. And that is just beautiful to me. And I think that this really gets hammered home with the prophecy and how Susie reacts to that final prophecy panel we don't get to see. Because she is devastated by it, clearly. But she puts on a brave face, she tells Ralsei, oh, that's stupid, that would never happen. And all the same, she comes back to Chris at the very end of the chapter to say, we're not going to let that happen. It's so exciting in a way I cannot put into words, I think. But it is so interesting because it's like, what did she see that freaked her out like that? What did Ralsei see? Did Chris see it? And will we discover what this is sooner or later? I honestly have no clue, and I'm so excited for it. And just in general, Deltarune has been a massive rock this year for me. It has absorbed my life once again. I should never doubt Toby Fox's abilities to do this. And I think there is so much to be discussed, even just with these two chapters. And I haven't even touched upon the Weird Root or Gaster. Fuck. Okay, I want to talk about Gaster for a bit, because that was crazy. The halfway mark has been achieved. How much longer now, my Deltarune? Oh man, that is so exciting to me. I have no clue what that means. There's this yearning, there's impatience, anticipation, there's so many feelings that Gaster probably has about whatever his Deltarune is or is going to be. And I'm so excited to find out more about that. I have no clue what to make of the Weird Root though. That is absolutely gutting. I've not managed to play it. I don't have the heart for it. But, oh man. As stories go, I think this is so harrowing. It's strong, but in a different way to the genocide route in Undertale. It feels like we're accelerating to a purpose we don't fully understand. It's this perverted sentimentality taken to this absurd degree where we're basically removing all of the aspects that we love about Undertale and Deltarune. The plot is skimped out on. Giant chunks of the plot are just missing. Character motivations are removed or like subverted and twisted, and you're hurting these characters by preventing them from flourishing. It feels like a different game at points, and it feels like Toby is really wanting to push that. I honestly don't know where it's going to end. Maybe I'll make a video talking about Deltarune more, because I've got so much to say about it. and it's so cool that people get to keep talking about it. Alright, next up is the Undertale 10th anniversary stream. While it's a bit of a cheat to add this in the same section, I thought, why not? Most of this was just Toby and the fangamer people just sort of playing the game with these additions that are just crazy. We have things like additional rooms, new NPCs and areas, and I love the sentiment of it. The sentiment that the world that we've seen is not all that there is. There is so much more to this world. There are places we haven't travelled, there are monsters we haven't seen. It is beautiful, and I think it was just so much fun to just see all of these new ideas that Toby had about, what if the world was a bit bigger? What if you could find this little lumberjack? What if there was the fucking Gaster door? That shit was crazy. That it just kind of was there and sprang a bunch of theories from it. Oh god, that was nuts. The sand stuff was funny. It was just kind of bonkers that we got a quote-unquote pacifist Sans fight, and it's just him being an absolute troll with the platforming. It's so much fun, and I especially love the Azrael fight and the additional dialogue that was given. Oh man, I'm just tearing up a bit thinking about it. I'm not actually tearing up, but I'm thinking about tearing up because God, that was so special to me, and it actually increased my estimation of Azrael as a character. The quote of, it can't have been a year, it can't have been 3 years, it can't have been 5 years, it can't have been 10 years since I lost Kara. That's the implication. It's this idea that Azrael is terrified, not just of being without Kara, like in the main game, but this idea that every year they are getting further and further away from their memories of their sibling. That is immensely powerful for just additional dialogue as just kind of a little thing. And I think it does so much to inform Azrael as a character. Oh, it's wonderful. Toby's whole speech at the very end, talking about this is his peek behind the curtain to let us imagine what more of this world would be. That is a beautiful sentiment, and I just don't know if I can improve on that. Undertale and Deltarune's ability to make people imagine more of the world is one of its greatest strengths. And in large part that is down to how Toby Fox is such a fun world builder. He doesn't explain everything. He leaves gaps, he leaves mysteries. And I think that it's going to be strange once that the games are complete, because whilst we probably will get a good idea, there might be lingering mysteries, and if there aren't, then that's going to be even weirder, I think. But yeah, I absolutely love these games. Bravo, Toby, you did a great job. Next up is Girls Band Cry. This is a anime that I was wanting to watch last year, didn't get around to it, and absolutely loved it when I got to see it this year. It's very similar in tone to Jellyfish Can't Swim in the Night, but whilst that one I would say is more traditionally anime, it's a bit more theatrical? That doesn't feel right. A little bit more melodrama. It's a bit more melodrama, a little bit more emphasized. Girls Band Cry, in comparison, is kind of a bit more muted, a little bit more... It's got a bit more bite to it. And, I love how this show looks and feels. It's got this very casual, conversational tone in the way the characters talk, and the 3D animation is such an interesting look that feels so distinctly itself. I don't know. Like, we've had 3D animes before, but this one feels like it fits, I guess. And I really enjoy all the characters here. The entire band are just a lovely unit. I don't have tons to say about the story specifics. I think I would want to rewatch it again to kind of get more of a sense of it. But each of the characters go through these interesting struggles, and it's a bit of a shame that some of them get a bit less explicit focus than others, but I still like how you can piece together bits about their lives, and sort of why would they act the way they act. I can't remember her name, but the girl with the blonde hair and the darker skin, she is so interesting despite the fact that she never gets a focus episode. She has this implied interesting history with her family and heritage of, okay, she's mixed race, she lives in Japan, she is clearly sort of presenting this sort of braver face, and she's a little bit older than the rest of the characters. So there's so much there that you can kind of read into of she's a little bit more secure in her identity, and as a result she gets to kind of develop in a less overt way than characters like Nina and Momoka. And yeah, just in general, absolutely wonderful show. I love the visuals of this, and some of the songs were really, really cool. The Chainsaw Man movie. Oh my god, how do I even express this? I think this was probably my favourite film of the year. Like the film that came out this year, I suppose. This is already a really cool arc, and it works surprisingly well in movie format. So the Chainsaw Man movie is focused on the Rize arc. Rize arc? Listen, I'm gonna be so real. I called her Rize when I first read the manga, so I'm still calling her Rize. Yeah, argue in the comments, I'm sorry. And yeah, this arc is just amazing. There's so many explosions, there is such an exciting change in this arc, because this is probably the arc where I begin to feel a lot more for Denji as a person. Because prior to this, you know, I enjoy his antics, I enjoy the world, but here you really get this sensation of, okay, this is a kid who's kind of messed up and trying his best, but he's, you know, being exploited at every single angle. And you also feel for Rize as well, because there's this clear kinship that the two develop, even if it starts off as Rize being fake. Like, there's this quite obvious sort of look and sort of fake laugh that she's giving. She's clearly faking the kindness a bit at the beginning. But once they enter the school, she clearly loosens up a lot and just enjoys herself. And even after killing the assassin and sort of being reminded of her mission, she clearly still has come to care about Denji. The swimming pool scene is a great moment of vulnerability for both of these characters, as it proves this is them at their most vulnerable. They are literally not clothed, but also, in hindsight, Rize doesn't have any ability to use her devil form here. And that's so interesting. That's something I didn't pick up on until I saw someone else mention it. And then there's that second half, like the switch. The music during the switch of it from this kind of slice of life kind of romance story to this bombastic action. It's fantastic. Like, you feel the dread in the fireworks going off, and then suddenly there's a tone shift, and Beam gets Denji the hell out of Dodge, and then all the insanity just unfolds and unfolds. Oh my god, it's so cool! The only bit which I don't really think did quite as well was there was a bit where they introduce, I don't know if it was an OP or an ED, but like it was midway through, like the chase scene where they're on top of the cars. That was a little weird. Oh my god, everything else about that film was just visual audio feast. And I love the anime specific opening. It's just one of those things which I'm really glad has been getting more in fashion, because it's just so cool to have like almost like a little opening in the film of like, hey, this is like a season, only in movie form. I don't know what I'm saying. Listen, Chainsaw Man the movie, awesome. Fuck, man. There's so much to love there. I really love the Typhoon Devil remix, Edge of Chainsaw. Yeah, like that one, that was a lovely song. Next up, Raiders of the Lost Ark. This was my second Indiana Jones film. I saw Dial of Destiny, wasn't very impressed, but this one was really good. I absolutely love how focused this film is. It's the perfect adventure film in my mind. There were so many interesting locations and set pieces for fights, and I think that does so much to make every single time an action scene begins feel unique. Because it wasn't just beat the bad guys, there was always a sort of additional objective, and the bad guys were more so an obstacle to that. Like, there was the point where Indiana Jones was trying to either escape the temple or save, I can't remember his love interest, was it Marion? I think it was Marion. There were like all of these interesting little additional hiccups and things. I really love the plane one, where like the plane's swinging around and Indy's just fighting this Nazi who's just like fiending for a fist fight. It's so funny. And the monkey doing the fucking Nazi salute, that shit's crazy. It was so much fun. I had such a good time. And yeah, I just don't know what to say. It was so cool. This one is a weird one, but I do want to include it. I haven't got the specific episode number up, but this was an episode of Grand Designs of all things. And I just randomly stumbled across this episode and thought, wow, this is fascinating. Because it was this guy who had spent the past 4 years, I think it was. He started in like 2021, ended in 2025. This giant building project to make a castle. But it wasn't like a traditional castle. It was this ugly, modernized, sort of open plan castle, and it just looked so gross. And I found it so compelling to watch this guy be interviewed by the presenter and just be like, yeah, I'm having to take out more and more money. And he was just pulling out these absurd amounts of money. He got money from his grandmother's pension, or his mother's pension, sorry. His wife and himself have had to like mortgage their house and stuff, all to finance this project that just would not get off the ground properly. And I don't know, there was something so compelling about this display of kind of hubris, I guess, because it was just this constant idea of a guy wanting to make a monument to himself or to his legacy or for his children. And I don't know, there was something so weirdly compelling about this one episode of a show that I never watched. It was so interesting. And yeah, I don't really have much more to say about it, other than it was such an interesting experience, and it felt like a guy trying to live a dream which wasn't even clear to him. Alright, next up, Soda Pop. Soda Pop, or Words Bubble Up Like a Soda Pop, was a film that was the butt of the joke in one of my friend groups. So, for some of my films that I watch, I have polls set up where people can vote for which film they want. And Soda Pop was unfortunately on the butt end of every single poll, where it just would never succeed. It never got a chance in like 90% of the polls it was in. I think it was in like 14 polls. It was crazy. And yeah, Soda Pop, oh god, this poor film lost so many times, and then I started watching it, made a poll on whether I should continue. It lost, I did something else, and I finished it the next day. But this is a really charming little film. It's not complicated, but I love how vibrant the world design is. The colours just pop, and it's just really, really cute. I think the way it uses haiku, like Japanese haiku, and the culture surrounding that means it's a very specialized film for those who are interested in that aspect of Japanese culture. But even if you aren't, you can still find it really fun. The search for the record provides this really fun connection point for all of the characters, and man, it's just charming. Okay, next up is the Ice Water album by Rebecca Sugar. I have been a fan of Rebecca Sugar's work for a long time now. I would say Adventure Time was where I was first acquainted with her work, but Steven Universe was the thing that got me interested in her as a creator. But Ice Water is such a sweet little album where it's portraying so many interesting feelings related to Rebecca's creative process, I suppose. This is kind of best exemplified through two of my favourite songs in it. So first is the titular Ice Water, where it's a reflection on Rebecca Sugar's time at university and how she would be so excited to develop her craft and to be with her loved ones and explore a city that was new and exciting. This song has some beautiful lyrics and this nostalgic sense of excitement and joy. I think my favourite lyrics are, "I don't care what happens to me, I just want art and music and you." It's such a wistful song, and I think it really embodies some of Rebecca Sugar's strengths as an artist to kind of tap into these feelings of joy and excitement. And if you saw my AMV for what I watched this year, you'll notice that I did pick out that specific moment for Ice Water, the music video. The moment of Rebecca Sugar kind of running and just leaping up in the air and letting paper scatter around as she sort of twirls in the air. That is such a strong visual to me, and it's just so charming. And the second song in this album that I really want to highlight is This Is a Love Song, because this feels so different to every single other song I've seen from Rebecca Sugar, because it is angry, it is bitter, she yells in this song, and that is something you never hear from her vocal range normally. It is this bitter, toxic, aggressive song about a relationship that has become abusive and that has treated her horribly, and this kind of simultaneous feeling of, I want to beg for forgiveness, but I also want to cut ties from this person. And it kind of ends in this very kind of sad, meek way that I find, it's a beautifully powerful song. It is nothing like any of Rebecca Sugar's other songs, and I love it for that. It's an energy that I can only really aspire to sort of see more of, and hope that she doesn't get hurt, because it really makes you feel for her. And man, what a song. Alright, this one is big spoiler territory. I know I've probably put a spoiler warning at the beginning of a lot of these sections, but especially for this one. This is Witch Hat Atelier. Oh boy, this was a lot. This was the time that I caught up with all of Witch Hat. I am up to date on the most recent chapter, so if you're only reading the volumes, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to skip this section. Spoilers up to the chapter on screen. Okay. Witch Hat Atelier has made me cry. I was surprised it took this long, but man, it's just been peak after peak after peak with Witch Hat. The way in which the Silver Eve arc has finally ended is genuinely so fantastic. Out of all of the bits of Silver Eve, the thing that sticks out to me the most is when Coco is trying to convince Belderit to try reverting the leech, and she gives this absolutely amazing speech. It's over a couple of pages, but the bit at the very climax that makes me tear up every single time I've seen it there's this line that Coco says during this, which has just been this amazing North Star for me for so long after I've heard it, because it's so powerful. I will never give in to despair. I won't stop because someone says I can't do something. Oh god, man. I don't know how to put that other than it is life-affirming. Coco has gone from a character who has experienced the depth of despair and the heights of jubilation, and she's in this constant state of flux where she is having to battle against despair to try and be hopeful. And I think that this is best exemplified during that scene where she vows, I am not giving in, I am going to survive this, I am going to keep going. And this is the same arc where she has a breakdown in front of in front of Tata and Kustas of, oh my god, I can't do anything, I cannot save a single person, I am trapped. And she manages to survive it. She manages to survive, she manages to keep going after thinking about her friends and having that support structure to take care of her. It is so beautiful. And that's not even getting into the Silverwood tree. Oh my god, the Silverwood tree. This has been one of those analogies which has only grown in my estimation of it, because I was enamored by it when I first heard it, but it just kept getting better, because what with the reveals around Kustas having the tree inside of him and it growing basically like a parasite, causing him to functionally die once he is at a state of warmth and comfortableness and home, that is gutting. And the reveals of this tree basically surviving by providing this kind of light before draining people is so powerful to me. I don't know how to put it into words other than it is so immensely gutting, and it complicates this metaphor of the Silverwood roots as this kind of synonym for home, because if home is built on bloodshed, how can you call that stability? And the way in which Quifrey is sort of struggling, thinking about his past, the way we see that he clearly had a lot of trauma surrounding his eye and the tree that is growing inside him. And he's basically having to constantly manage this tightrope of, I cannot be feeling comfort, or else I am going to lose myself, I'm not going to have my purpose. And the most recent chapter has given us the reveal that Ollie is the one to recommend that he should get his memories right, so that Quifrey can keep living. That says so much about their relationship, and just this way in which Quifrey sees Ollie as the light. He sees him as the reason he should keep going, but he cannot share everything with him, otherwise he will die. It's so immensely sad, because it feels like Shirahama is setting up this perfect house of cards where everything works just about right at the moment, but if a gentle breeze comes along, everything can come crashing down. I genuinely don't know where Witch Hat will go from this point, because I see a few potential options. I think the first option is we have an arc during the winter, because there has clearly been this rising tension between the obvious disparity between those with magic and those without. King Dinraldi bowing to the witches, the ways in which witches have been able to add to sort of healing. It feels like there's a lot of potential there for sort of this simmering conflict to boil over. And I think the other potential way that things could go is a time skip. And I have no idea how that would work. But, you know, we've had hints about what Coco might look like when she's older. What about the rest of them? I don't know. And oh my god, I can't believe I forgot it, but Tata! Oh god. I had this whole mini breakdown when I was just reading that chapter where Tata completely loses faith in the witch system.
Tata, no, stop, you. Tell me everything, Coco, right now. What are you hiding from us? And what are you trying to hide from us? Tell me the truth. Holy shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! No! Oh shit! Sorry, I'm typing in Discord at the same time. Oh no! Oh no! Tell me everything, Coco, right now. What are you hiding from us? And what else are you trying to hide from us? Tell me the truth. He's so scary looking! Oh my god! I didn't expect him to look that scary, because, like, he's such a soft little guy most of the time, but he looks scary. I can't. The person, I can't stop the words from coming out, who told me about the tree was Master Quifri. Quifri. I knew it. Dagda. Yeah. Don't let her go. Make her speak. Jesus Christ. Oh, Anita's hands, they look all creepy. Oh no. Oh, this is... You can tell that this is like shattering Tata's world. It's shattering Coco's like faith in him. Oh no. Oh no. You're welcome to join us if you like. This boy is important to you, isn't he? Or you could simply stay and wait for them to take you to Adanley. Oh fuck, are they gonna take them? Oh no. Oh god, right, because fucking Eastleys. Oh no. Oh no, and Tata, he's got a forbidden spell. Oh no. Come on. Let's go together. Oh, Tata, no, you've fucked it, dude. You've ruined any chance. Oh god. Before I look at the next page, I'm already having to like mentally process the fact that this might be the end of friendship.
He has the brand on him where if he holds someone, he can force the truth out of them. And it's so gutting to see him take this beautiful, wholesome friendship with Coco. It's so sad that this beautiful friendship with Coco ends up dissolving due to Tata's mistrust of the witches. He sees adults as completely untrustworthy, and he just breaks any semblance of trust that he has. It's so gutting, and I have no idea how he can ever fix that. I think Coco is a remarkably forgiving person, but it's clear that she felt extremely, betrayed. She felt betrayed by what he did, and it's so sad to see. Oh man, I am so excited for more Witch Hat. It is one of my favourite stories of all time, and I'm so excited to see more of it. Okay, I think it's time for a lightning round. This is where I go through things really quickly if I don't have much to say on them. Alright, let's give it a go. One Punch Man's webcomic. This is a really cool comic, and it's just really cool and fun, and I like the politics. They have interesting politics in the One Punch Man. Funny punch, go punch. It's so cool. Hilda is an incredibly cute little show. I don't have much to say about it other than it's really charming. Hilda's really sweet, and I'm excited to watch the rest of it. Sinners. I mean, it's awesome. I don't know what to say. I absolutely love the scene where they're dancing through time and we have the zoom out of the burning barn. That shit is so cool, and the way it talks about culture basically being subsumed and using vampires as an allegory for that's fucking awesome. What works for autistic adults? It's the only book I've read about autism since getting my diagnosis. It's good, it's sympathetic. I don't have much more to say about it. Porco Rosso and The Wind Rises. These are both really good Ghibli films. Oh man, I love Porco. It's like a fairy tale, and I love that for it. It's so sweet, and The Wind Rises is one of my favourite of Ghibli's, purely down to how they discuss the themes and the weird, insane directions they go by just exploring a man's life. It's partly a war story, partly a story about love, and the paper playing scene is great, and I love pyramids. I want to see people make pyramids. This makes sense in the film context. It's really sweet. Old Boy. This was a film recommended by my friend Cactus, and this film was fucking sad and depressing, but man, it was good. I'm very impressed with how much the metaphor of a man living through a screen ends up influencing his warped perception and this warped revenge by both him and his adversary. It is insanely bleak and twisted, but man, it is powerful. Mario Kart World. I get to play as a bovine. I get to play as a Goomba. That's so fucking cool. The track design in this one isn't quite as good, and I haven't found the music quite as earwormy, but it's really fun, and I should play it more. Whew, that was quite a lot, wasn't it? Alright, now back onto the Yap session. Batman the Animated Series. Okay, so, full context, outside of knowing the gist of Batman and kind of being, having knowledge adjacent to Batman, I've never actually seen or read a Batman comic or story, nor have I watched the films. The most I've done is see the first issue of Court of Owls, and that's it. So, imagine my surprise when this series consistently blows me out of the water in just how consistently well written it is. There are so many villains in Batman's Rogues Gallery, and they're all really solid. Even the weaker ones still have this aspect of almost being like a dark reflection of what Batman could have been if certain traits were emphasized, or if he went in a slightly different life circumstance. I think the best example with this has got to be Two-Face, Mr. Freeze, and I guess maybe even the Penguin. Like, you see aspects of Bruce within these characters, and there's things such as his obsession with avenging a loved one that could be tied to Mr. Freeze, his aristocratic lifestyle that can tie to the Penguin. You can apply all of these different threads to a lot of the best Batman villains. I was really surprised at how much I liked the Mad Hatter, and oh god, there was another one. The Mad Hatter and Clayface. They were some of my absolute favourites. I think that the ways in which they play off Batman and push him into these interesting conflicts genuinely was so gripping, and the animation on Clayface especially was mesmerising. Some of the most satisfying animation I've seen this year. I also think that Batman really excels in the episodes where you get a different point of view, whether that's a weaker version of Batman or a different character as the focus. I think that they end up using a lot of different ways of storytelling, such as the Eyewitness episode, or the episode where the Joker's getting a favour from just a regular guy and basically blackmailing him to sort of basically just fuck with him. It's so cool. The Amazing Digital Circus. Oh boy. The Amazing Digital Circus is so interesting to me, because I have seen quite a lot of Glitch's output this year, and genuinely they are some of the biggest winners this year. It's actually incredible. But especially with Digital Circus, I've been blown away ever since, I would say, episode 5 came out, the Untitled episode, because that took much more of a specific character-filled lens to the characters and sort of explored them, and it was so interesting and vibey. I loved how loose everything felt, and genuinely just let the characters just kind of shine outside of a traditional plot structure. I think that especially once we get to They've All Got Guns, that is when the series has reached what I would say is its current peak for me. That episode is phenomenally well constructed, and I think especially when it comes to Jax's mask, because he flip-flops between being genuine and being fake, and it's done in such an interesting way in his facial animations and Michael Kovash's performance of him. But it reaches this fantastic apex when Pomni is trying to confront him about this, where he rejects her advancement to sort of try and solidify the fact that they're friends. He cannot accept this, and he ends up kind of burning that bridge by sort of doing this over-the-top monologue of, "You're just my plaything, I don't care about you." It's genuinely so harrowing to see him go to this extent to kind of stay inside of this idea that I'm the funny one. Everyone here is just an archetype, they're not real people. And the sort of bait and switch where Pomni asks, what if I were to abstract? What if I were to go away? And then she's sort of having the gun held up to her head. That is an amazing bit of bait and switch, where you think that she's going to shoot herself to kind of try and make a twisted point, but then she rejects that and says, no, fuck that, I'm just going to beat him up. It's genuinely some of my favourite bit of directorial storyboard blocking work, because that kind of level of implying one thing, then twisting it to do something different, that is so difficult to do, and it was so satisfying. That is a sequence that I am going to try and analyse in more detail in a video which will hopefully come out in January. And then there is the latest episode, the beach episode. I think, if nothing else, this episode solidified how alien Kane is. I've never heard of the Chinese room before this episode, but man, it's just the perfect way to describe Kane in this situation where he's this AI who can simulate real emotions but doesn't seem to fully grasp the impact of his actions or what him doing this to the players could sort of mean. He puts them on this fake adventure and gets their hopes up about finding an exit before ripping that away and saying, you picked the good ending by staying with me. And he's constructed it in a way to gratify himself and to suggest, you shouldn't leave me alone, I want to be with you. But he just does not understand that Jax is in this really fragile mental state, and that the others do want to legitimately get out. He doesn't seem to recognise this and just utilises that as an adventure point. It is so interesting, and I love that he's basically turned everyone in the circus against him with this. And I think there's so much that you can dig into with okay, why is he singling out Kinga? Is it purely just because he would ruin the adventure? Or is there something deeper there? And man, that is so tantalizing. If I'm getting the right read on this story, I think that they are going to eventually become friends with Kane and get him on side. But I don't think any of them are leaving. I think they're stuck in here and they have to deal with basically being in limbo and make peace with the fact that even if Kane is different, they need to get along with him. And he needs to learn to appreciate them rather than just kind of doing his own thing. I don't know. Digital Circus is a really cool show, and I think the Jax focus has really emphasized some of its strongest elements. There's just so much amazing stuff there. This is an interesting one. Red Hood and Otir of the Flame. So, recently I've been really interested in Yuki Kawaguchi, I think that's his name. Yuki Kawaguchi's work. He's this mangaka who was originally an assistant to Horikoshi of My Hero fame, and he has made a series of one-shots and 2 series, and I've found it really interesting to watch his growth and read through his work. So Red Hood was his first serialized series, and it ended exceedingly early. It got axed 14 chapters in. There was less than 3 volumes of content, and man, I feel so mixed because he's clearly a talented artist, but you can see he struggles when it comes to composing a page and trying to kind of make it work as a story that you're hooked by. It feels quite by the books. It doesn't feel like it's quite figured out what its emotional hook is, even though it's clearly trying to, and it's trying to sort of adhere to the sort of shonen structures. But I think the thing that really makes Red Hood stand out is that ending, because it is so transparent that Kawaguchi is livid that his series has been cancelled practically before it had a chance to even fly. And it's so powerful, the way in which we go from the training arc of just a sort of an exam basically, to we cut to the main villains and they're seemingly just having a conversation, and then one of them just disappears and the other is like, wait, who was I talking to? What was that person's name? It's genuinely like such an odd moment to sort of watch the story almost kind of recognize and signpost the fact, yeah, we're ending soon. We've been axed and we have to wrap this shit up. And yeah, it just gets weirder from there, where Kawaguchi is clearly trying to make the most of this situation whilst venting his frustrations. And yeah, there's some really powerful pages, like there's the ones where it's like transparently obvious that this is about Shonen Jump and how people don't like what he's made and he feels kind of unappreciated for it. But then there's other pages, like, I forgot his name, but the guy with the beard saying, let there be an ending. It doesn't need to be a good ending or a bad ending. It just needs to end. And it's like, man, that is absurdly cool for a series which has been axed in like less than like 30 chapters. The actual ending is pretty whatever to me, outside of some of the extras where you can tell Kawaguchi is really frustrated he didn't get to use some of these characters more. Most of this is just kind of pretty bare bones, kind of like, okay, we're gonna defeat this bad guy and then the adventure continues. I don't really see how you can end a series which has been axed and you know you can't really come back to it. But then there's Otir of the Flame. Otir of the Flame is both a progression and stagnation in some ways of Kawaguchi's work. Because on the whole, I think that there's some things he didn't fully take on board since finishing Red Hood and doing his various one-shots. He still struggles to find a emotional connection point, whether that is a character, a joking dynamic. There is a struggle there. There's a struggle when it comes to finding something to hook the audience, I think. And that's a shame, because I do want to love his stories, but everything just doesn't quite connect. Otier is a fairly bare-bones character, where he's this very honourable character. He's kind-hearted, he wants the best. But then there's a really interesting chapter in the tree arc, I can't remember what it's called, where the elf lady says, "Have you been communicating with your spirit properly?" And there's this brief conversation around how do you best communicate with a partner? Are they a partner? Are they a tool? And it almost feels like Kawaguchi kind of discussing this through the page of like, how do I feel about my characters? How do I want them to interact? Because at the moment, I've not got much friction between them. And I don't think he's managed to solve that yet. He clearly wants people to like his characters, and I think in part he's having to recognise that doesn't mean that they always need to get along. And man, Otier is such a weird beast, because there's some characters I really like in it. I think that Doda and Chio Rio, I can't remember how to pronounce their names. The coward demon and the water demon, both of them are really fascinating to me, because Doda is a coward. He absolutely despises humans and despises people, but he sees some genuineness in how, like, Doda sees the only sort of genuine emotion as hate. He thinks that the only way that people can show a true unadulterated emotion is through hating someone. And that's already really interesting, but he just doesn't have enough time to kind of explore that. And I think part of that is Otier as a character is not the most hateful person. By far the most interesting part of that fight is after we learn about this motivation of his, and Otier goes into his demigod form and does show some genuine kind of hate and lack of restraint. It's a really cool little bit of characterization. Similarly with the water demon, there's this really interesting idea of a person who doesn't want to be reached and doesn't want connections. They clearly sort of hold this resentment. They see Otier as a hypocrite for feeling bad for some of his enemies, but not all of them. And this kind of comes from a lack of respect, in some ways, from the water demon's own life. They were used and abused, but then took the name of their abuser as they sort of inflicted violence on the world, not really giving a shit why people didn't really want to die. They just sort of saw it as the natural way of things. And I know that the way I'm saying it makes it sound like this is a really profound story. I think it's lacking a lot, and this is me having to kind of put in a lot of legwork. But man, I hope the best for Kawaguchi, because Otier has just revealed its main bad guy, and it feels like it's very close to an ending. So I have a feeling it's been axed, and this is the kind of wind down. Man, it's a shame, because I do like Otier, and I love how you can see Kawaguchi's art and writing progress week to week, and you can see steps forward, steps back. There are definitely attempts to improve, and I wish him all the best, because I want to see him succeed and have a series that is successful. Also, I think it's very sad that in both of the arcs where a big muscled woman is first introduced, which is quite clearly Kawaguchi's type, is also the arc which both of these seem to have been axed on. It's unfortunate, to say the least. Next up is Doctor Who Season 2? Is it Season 2? Doctor Who 2025. Man, I feel so weird about this season because it has some of the highest highs of recent Doctor Who, and boy, it also has lows. So, first with the good, I think that as a season, there are some really good episodes here. The story engine, the episodes with Belinda, shit, I'm trying to remember them off the top of my head. The Well. I really liked The Well. I really liked most of these episodes because the Doctor and Belinda work very well as a duo. They bounce off each other well, and whilst Belinda doesn't really get the most amount of room to grow because it seems like her addition was a sort of fairly last minute change, she is still really cool. As much as I love some of these episodes and how they explore the Doctor and Belinda, there is just this lingering frustration because the finale was really weird. So Doctor Who the previous year had Sutekh. It had this very weird anticlimax about Ruby's birth mother. That was bizarre because I went to the cinema to see it, and I think everyone expected something kind of big, and then it was sort of, no, she's just a normal old person, and it's what we made of it that made it special. And it's like, okay, Russell, sure thing, man. This time round, it was kind of the opposite, where so much gets thrown at us with, oh my god, Omega, the Rani, and Mrs. Flood both being there, so they sort of had to compete for attention. Ruby being there, the Doctor being trapped in this kind of weird fake world with Belinda, where they kind of had things retconned, and it was a weird set of episodes. I liked them until it was sort of evident that it's like, oh, they were having to tape this thing together with glue, particularly near the end, where it's like, okay, the Rani gets eaten, Sutekh gets lasered, and oh shoot, Shooty needs to regenerate. We gotta save the baby. And it's like, I can see a world where this stuff worked. The Doctor giving himself up to save a single person, that is beautiful, but the way it was done just didn't register as a regeneration to me until he said, oh, I'm gonna miss this face, and it's like, oh, okay. And I don't feel the most confident when it comes to the future of Doctor Who. I'm not saying that casting Billie Piper in this kind of role won't work, but it's clear it's pandering to nostalgia and trying to drum up hype for this mystery of, is Billie Piper the next Doctor? Is it Rose Tyler? Ooh. And it's like, man, I am not interested. I think that you can do this once for like the 60th anniversary, but trying to do it again so soon, it genuinely just feels like there is a sinking ship and Russell is just trying his best to keep things afloat, and I feel bad for him because I want to make it clear, whenever I'm trying to sort of criticize these things, it's never a personal indictment. These are tough old industries, and Doctor Who seems to just be a cursed sort of role where people cannot really sort of continue to grasp it because it is such a weird, unwieldy series. And I don't know, I feel like what would be best for Doctor Who is to go into a rest period. I don't know how they can continue it, and I certainly don't really feel like they're in a good position to keep things just sort of chugging along. They need a refresh, they need to kind of readjust what they are going for, I think. But yeah, I wish the best for Doctor Who. I still haven't seen all of War Between Land and Sea, but I'm tepidly interested. I'm not going to pretend like it's the most exciting thing in the world. It's an interesting premise, but I have a feeling it's just going to become a love story. Nicola travelling around the demon's world. God, this was a nice little story. This was really, really sweet. I really love the bond between Nicola and Simon. They are very, very sweet. I love a good sort of found family where, there's this sort of parent figure and the kid. It's just really sweet how Nicola just kind of views this world that's so different and weird as just kind of cool. She doesn't really get all the customs, but she treats people with respect, and it kind of feels like if you mix Yotsuba with a fantasy setting. Like, things never get dark, but, it still touches upon these sort of questions of how does Nicola feel about her missing mum? What kind of crazy people can they meet in their adventures? And, man, it's just such an evocative art style, where it's this mix of quite scratchy, cartoony, and almost kind of loose outsider art, whilst also clearly having a lot of technical skill and knowledge and the ability to render kind of fur and other sort of textures. It's a really interesting little read, and it won't take you too long. I read it over a couple of days over the summer, and man, it was so much fun. Nicola is the GOAT, and yeah, I love the chapters with Simon's dad. Simon's dad. I don't know why I'm trying to call him Simone. With Simon's dad, and him trying to fly. That was really, really sweet. Love Nicola. Land of the Lustrous, aka Hoseki no Kuni. Oh my god, what a series that I did not expect to love. This was one of the few that I saw from an anime manga book club that I'm a part of, and this was such an interesting manga because I knew the very basic premise of gemstone people, but man, I don't want to spoil it, but at the same time I do want to talk about it, so I'm gonna say this now. This is a series that you want to try and go in as blind as possible. I know pretentious people say that all the time. Trust me, this is one of those series where not knowing anything is awesome. Skip to the next timestamp. I seriously don't want to be the reason you don't get to experience this amazing story. So, let's talk spoilers. Land of the Lustrous is amazing. I love how it feels almost split in two halves. Everything before the moon and everything after the moon. Because before the moon there's this almost dreamlike nostalgia to everything in Land of the Lustrous. Foss's journey, the presentation of the fights, everything has this slightly kind of, I don't know how to describe it, it feels like a slightly hazy memory even as I was first reading it. It was this world that was similar but different to our own. I know it sounds stupid, but Foss reminds me a lot of Thomas the Tank Engine. Let me cook, please. Because they have this kind of yearning to see the world, to be bigger than they are, to be stronger than they are, to do what other people cannot do. And that is exactly what Thomas the Tank Engine is like when that story first begins. But Foss goes in such an interesting direction because every single time they lose a part of themselves and rebuild themselves and get stronger, quote unquote, they begin to lose bits of themselves. And I think the point at which that really kind of got emphasized to me was when Foss's head kind of exploded from the alloy. I can't remember what chapter number it was, but I'm pretty sure the title was something along the lines of like chastising or something, where it was Foss physically being unable to cope with the stress of their new situation, so their head basically just exploded. And I think once the story begins rolling and Foss loses Antark, Foss feels responsible for Ghost, there are all of these little things that build up that Foss kind of ends up in this horrible cycle of something bad happens and Foss feels responsible for it. So they say, okay, I'm going to have to work even harder and be even more resilient to reach my goals. And man, the way they shift and they're faced with impossible choices, there's so much to dig into with how Foss is sort of struggling, and how in some ways they are this quite entitled character at the beginning, thinking, oh, woe is me, I don't have a job, my life is so difficult. But at the same time, they have this inability to see that people love them for who they are, even if they're not necessarily useful. Because I think one of the saddest parts of this entire story is Foss's inability to recognize that Cinnabar would move heaven and earth to be friends with them. They don't need a reason, they don't need to be useful or have a mission. They just want friends, and it's so sad to me that Foss doesn't recognize that, and that Cinnabar can't communicate that. There's this disconnect between the two, and they just get further and further apart as the Lunarians come further into the picture, and Foss is continually faced with more and more impossible choices. This series also has this really cool philosophical angle, particularly with Lapis's head, because Foss loses their head, and whilst for them that doesn't mean that they've completely lost like all of their inclusions, which are like the thing that makes them them, that is such a distinct shift in the story, because humans, and particularly I found when I was reading, I found it so weird to think that Foss didn't have their original head. And I had a really interesting discussion with some friends as I was reading about this question of, okay, then what constitutes a person? What constitutes your sense of self? Is it the memories, or is it the physical appearance? Is it a bit of both? And I think I ended up sort of settling on this idea that it was kind of a Ship of Theseus thing, where pieces of Foss get replaced, but at a certain point, I don't personally know when, I would say, but at a certain point, Foss is no longer themselves. They are a different being. And that is all part of Acme's plan, or Yama's plan. It's this really insidious, callous in some ways, approach that the Lunarians have got to, because they have been at this for millennia. They have been stuck in this eternal stalemate where they can't ascend to the other universe because Congo refuses to pray, and they it's maddening to them. They don't know what to do. And then Foss comes along and they say, okay, we're going to construct everything and push the puzzle pieces in a way to make Foss human, so that they can then give Congo the order to give up, and for them to then become the wishing machine. It's this delightfully twisted and messed up plan, and it's so difficult. The Lunarians are such a weird, tough pill to swallow, because I did not trust them one bit once the moon reveal happened, and I still didn't really trust Yama even later in the story. And I think that was in part related to their relationship to Cairngorm, because Cairngorm is this weird figure where they are being controlled by the remnants of Ghost's inclusions in their eyes. But I didn't trust Yama as he said that to them, because it was like, okay, is this a trick? Is this truth? And there was this consistent disconnect for me around, do I trust Acme, Yama, whatever you want to call him, and the rest of the Lunarians? Because in many ways they aren't evil, but they are so detached from what used to make them human that in many ways they've lost a lot of their morality and restraint, because they are so desperate for a solution, for some kind of ending. And to do that, they kind of have to make Foss's life a living hell. a living hell that they've orchestrated. And oh man, we had a 2-week break after reading volume 12, I want to say. And that was brutal, because it was this question of, okay, so Foss has actually managed to stop the Lunarian, to help the Lunarians ascend, but they're stuck, so what do they do, and how do they get an ending? And then that last volume, oh my god, that last volume was so powerful to me. It was both powerful and hollow in a way I've never experienced with a story before. It is so powerful how the pebbles are so human, but also so different from humans. Because both Foss and Ploop, Congo's brother, both of them only see the darkness of humanity. They see the vindictive, vengeful creatures that are willing to just do horrible, horrible things, and that's all they can associate humanity with. And Foss is kind of stuck in this idea of burning the bridge, this idea that humanity cannot in any way persist. And that's so sad. But the pebbles clearly give them hope. And Pebbles specifically, you know, the one around the little guy. God, man, the scene where the world is ending and Foss is just willing to accept it, and then the pebble goes, oh, well, that's a shame. I would love for us to live a little longer, because I just thought of a new song that we could make together. And it's like, fuck, man, that got me crying, dude. It's genuinely, I think, characters who have just this simple kindness and empathy to them, they can move me in a way few other things can. And Pebble is near and dear to my heart, and I know how stupid this sounds if you've not read the story. And if you've not read the story, why are you here? Go read it! I'm sorry for spoiling it for you! But yeah, oh my goodness, Pebble, fantastic character. And just everything about this story is so layered and multifaceted, and in many ways that makes it hard for me to kind of settle my feelings easily, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I think the profound shift between the first half and second half is fascinating. And the way that Foss goes from a character who's incompetent to competent but kind of very sort of stoic and mournful, to eventually, after the 200 years of hell where they are awake as Congo's slowly reconstructing them, and they just feel like a desperate animal after that. They're just desperate for a solution, and then they become this vindictive monster who laughs and has forgotten everything that makes Foss Foss. There's like no humour in that portion of the story, and it's so gutting. This is one of those stories where I could talk forever about it, but I do want to try and move on. But the last thing I want to say is the art is so elegant, so beautiful, so gory in some ways. The way that the gemstones are sort of shown, the Lustrous are shown being damaged and sort of cracked, it feels gory without actually having any gore, because it is, you know, these characters basically falling apart. And it's one of those manga which makes me want to make my own stories. I don't know how to put it other than that. My Hero Academia. Ooh boy. My Hero Academia's final season came out, and it was really good. Undoubtedly, I think my tastes have somewhat shifted away from how the anime has done these things. But My Hero is still one of those really, really important stories to me. Because My Hero is the thing that got me into anime, manga, all these communities that I otherwise would have never been part of. And this is probably the season of My Hero I've seen the most outside of possibly some of the early ones, because I watched it with a couple of groups of friends, and man, it was so special getting to experience this story ending a few different times with a few different sets of people. The episode with Bakugo, and it basically being his swan song, where he gets to absolutely unload on All For One. He gets to shine like a star. It is beautiful, and it is amazing to see how far he has grown from the sort of small bully willing to just tell a kid to off himself to becoming a true blue hero and stand up against All For One, who's just this absolutely insanely monstrous tyrant. It was a visual feast, and I've said it before, but this season of anime has been fantastic for people who love giant anime explosions, because with this and Chainsaw Man, we've been feasting. The other episodes I really want to highlight are the All For One backstory, because I think, as much as I've come to realize I will always dislike All For One and what he does for some of this story, I do appreciate him a lot more as an antagonist now, because he is a mixture of his environment and his quirk manifesting in this horrible, horrible way of a person who has the power to give and take, who only chooses to take, and to give only as a means of control. He is by far one of the most twisted characters in the series, partly due to that simplicity. And I kind of love how indiscriminate his violence is. We see him destroy his brother as he's trying to escape, and it's so inconsequential almost. It's so casually done. And I think the mix of that with his kind of glazed over eyes, it gives this really powerful impression. My Hero's ending also has the amazingness of Spinner, and I think at some point I just have to bite the bullet and just do a bit of a yap session about my feelings towards this ending, because even though there's aspects I don't like, even though I'm still not sure on how I feel about the hero suit at the very end, man, you can tell Horikoshi adores his characters and he wants the best from them. Also, Darby's weird life support thing is freaking terrifying. That legit looks like a torture machine and he looks like he's in pain. Please help him. I don't think he's doing good. My Hero Academia Vigilantes. Okay, this one I'm going to be fairly quick about. Got to see this with friends, and yeah, it was really fun. I forgot how much I liked Queen and Knuckle Duster. I don't have a ton of deep thoughts about this one. It was just really fun watching this with friends. I particularly love the speedy villain on the motorway who just wants to run fast. It's such a stupid motivation. It's just like, why is he a villain? Why can't he just do this like legally? It was so ridiculous that it just looped around to being great. Queen, it has this lovely presence that I really like as this kind of snarky, kind of somewhat manic character, and she's a great villain. And man, I am so excited to see more of Six. He is a really cool villain in the manga. I wasn't the biggest fan of how the manga deals with him later on, but I'm curious to see how it goes. Next up is Hollow Knight. I think that every year I have one or two games which I get totally enamored by, and this year Hollow Knight was that game. It is this fantastically made game which clearly loves being a platformer. It has these beautifully silky smooth controls, and when its combat is working at its best, Hollow Knight feels like a dance with your enemies. You know exactly what they're going to do, you know exactly where you need to move, you know how to respect them. It takes an immense amount of game knowledge, but also well-designed games to kind of allow for you to sort of have that experience. And whilst I think there are definitely aspects where this falls short, like the Mantis Lords versus the Traitor Lord, there's a kind of clear, distinct difference between how those fights are constructed. where the Mantis Lord feels like this very fair, honourable duel, while the Traitor Lord, that was a rough fight. I did not like that one. And yeah, I absolutely love this world. It is beautifully illustrated, and the seer describing it as beautiful but grotesque kind of summarizes this whole game's atmosphere, because it feels very somber a lot of the time, and I think that really works for it. It gives it this very unique identity, where it's this broken kingdom and you have to try and help it. I think one of the strongest moments in Hollow Knight for me was when I first saw the infected crossroads. This was because when I was wandering around and I'd sort of stumbled into Deep Nest, I'd ended up defeating the first of the 3 dreamers. So, in my mind, I had this really powerful sensation where I'd killed the dreamer, wondered, they didn't fight back, I wonder what that means. And then I went out, and then I went into the infected crossroads, and then it kind of hit me, oh god, did I cause this by killing one of the dreamers? Did I cause the infection to kind of further leak? And that was already a really powerful feeling. But the thing that made it even worse for me was when I went to the... oh god, what was it called? It was the glade in the spirit sort of area, where it's all of these deceased warriors and I think they were all Kickstarter back characters, but deceased warriors and deceased characters in this graveyard, which are being guarded by a sort of singular spirit of a bug. And it was so heartbreaking for me, reading all of these messages from all these fairly uplifting characters, you know, sort of wishing the knight the best and saying, you're going to be a fine warrior, you're going to do all of these amazingly good things. Whilst in the back of my head, I had this knowledge of I caused the infection to get worse, and whether or not that is the case, that emotion was so powerful. And particularly because I then went through the process of chopping them down to try and get more dream essence. I've learned since that you don't actually need to do that, but man, that made me feel like a genuine monster. And that is so interesting. I love the kind of grey morality when it comes to the Dream Nail quest. Because on one hand, you are giving peace, you are letting them move on. But are you? Is this really the best ending? And yeah, that was amazing. The actual final bosses were both really cool. Very, very cool title drop. The second super final boss, I was not very good at, and it took me forever and I got very frustrated, but man, I am glad I finished it. I'm so glad I finished that main game. I've not yet had the heart to try the DLCs, because they look very hard, and I've heard Silksong is even harder, so I'm a little bit scared. But yeah, Hollow Knight, absolutely recommend that. Fantastic game. Fionna and Cake Season 2. Have you ever seen a story that, you know, like, does pretty good, and you're thinking, okay, it might fuck up the landing, and then it does a perfect, like, triple backflip, and perfectly, like, nails the landing? Yeah, that's Fionna and Cake Season 2. It's this weird mix of way too much setup, some really solid payoff, and some weird stuff in between. Like, in essence, I don't think there's anything exactly wrong with this series, outside of the fact that the stakes feel so out of whack. Because on one hand, we've got Fionna and Cake dealing with small little personal issues of Fionna has love problems, and also wants to help her friends get the sweet spot back. And, you know, Cake has this kind of, like, uncomfortability about her body of, like, okay, if I'm a magic cat, where do I fit into this kind of mundane world? And then we have Huntress's plotline, where she's trying to save Finn from dying. I think we've got a bit of an issue with the stakes here. Yeah, as much as I like Fionna and Cake and in general Adventure Time, this was a horrendously mismanaged season in terms of stakes, and I think that kind of makes Huntress's side of the story kind of fall a bit flat. I loved the recontextualization of why does she act the way she does, but I wish we'd got further with it. However, what this series does well, it does really well. The dream sequences, the episode with Fionna and Fennel, and everything about the last few episodes, they pretty much nail it all. I love the undergrowth as a world-building location, and the way in which sort of regrets and things kind of get consumed by this worm before kind of going back up almost to the surface. Like, that is peak Adventure Time world building. I love it. And yeah, I don't know what to make of the cliffhanger, and I don't know how I feel about Huntress's plotline overall, but I think in general they kind of nailed it. I just wish that there was less setup and less of DJ Flame. Man, he was just kind of lame. But yeah, man, what an interesting little season. Okay, it's time for the lightning round number 2. First up, long story short, this is a really sweet little story about a family going through the ages. It's really cool. I love the ways in which they tackle grief and in general this idea of what does family mean to all of these characters. I don't know who my favorite character is. Shira's pretty cool. The mother's pretty cool. I forgot her name. I feel bad. And man, that last episode was very, very sweet. Just Cause 3. This is a game I've been playing for years, but I actually finished the main story for once. This is peak action game. You get to do crazy shit like this tank thing that I did. I'm showing a picture of it now. Look at me go. Whee! And yeah, Just Cause 3, really, 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 really fun. One battle after another. I don't have a ton to say about this film because I don't think I rate it as highly as other people do. But man, this was cool. I love the emphasis on community and the way in which childish things like code words are utilized by both the heroes and the villains. It adds this really interesting layer where one half of people are using them with a kind of genuine meaning and intent behind it, while the others purely use it as a kind of very poor excuse to disguise what they are. Also, Lockjaw, terrifying villain, and him saying, I want to be a Christmas adventurer. I'm a Christmas adventurer was insane. Bubsy 4D's demo. Bubsy moves like he's on caffeine 24/7. It's wild and kind of uncontrollable, but it has the chance to be really, really cool. After Sun. I think After Sun is really interesting in how it plays with your expectations, and it suggests one thing before pulling the rug out from under you and making you just go, oh, that's what this was all about. That is an immensely powerful feeling, and it's a real testament to how they edited this story, and that's incredible to me. Down the Mine. So the pilot for Thomas the Tank Engine released. I don't know how to fit this into my life, but I think it looks cool, and I'm so glad that it finally got released after all these years. Gentry Chow. Gentry Chow is so cool. I really can't emphasize enough how fun it is to have stories which are focused on different mythologies than just like Greek. It's so much fun. I think that there's some real nice character development in these, and I think especially when it comes to the final arc, the way in which that's constructed, while it might seem a bit quick and messy, it does this really interesting thing of almost feeling like a story that continues after the credits should have rolled. And that was such a cool feeling. Also, the message that, I think it was episode 5, where there's this question of what choice do I want to make in life? And then one of the characters basically just straight up says, like, it's not even a major character, it's just one of the minor characters, says, if you don't make a choice, someone is making a choice for you. That shit has stuck with me ever since I've watched it, and it's kind of terrifying that it's still pertinent today. Swing Girls! I love how this film utilizes jazz as just an influence throughout. It is so much fun. It is so charming, and yeah, it's just effortlessly funny. And I love that scene near the end where they're all just playing in the train. God, that's cool. Common side effects. Common side effects looks super pretty. Also, there's a really good story, but I need to rewatch it so that I can remember it all. But the final episode has some absolutely incredible visuals. I especially love the CEO sort of trying to sort of keep himself alive and witnessing all these insane visuals of his own, like, body and stuff. It's nuts. Mad God. Okay, so you're telling me that there's a film about how people are playing God, and it's in stop motion, and it's weird and dark and trippy. Why have I not seen this before? I don't understand what's going on, but I think it's cool. Yeah, but to put it in a different way, Mad God is fascinating. I have no idea what it's about. It looks awesome, weirdly nostalgic, and I love how many characters are trying to just cope with life. It's really cool. Superman! He's super, man. Yeah, jokes aside, Superman's really cool. I don't really know what else to say about it. It's just a very, very earnest film, and I think we needed that. Knights of the Wandering Castle. This has been a fantastic year for Knights. In terms of plot progression, we've had quite a lot of really cool detours and developments in the plot. I'm only going to stick to what has been officially released. Remember, you can support this webcomic and read stuff early if you subscribe to Looney's Patreon. It is well worth it because this story has just been so good as of late. I think last year I was excited to see more from Samson, Charlotte, and Armihan. And yeah, all three of these characters got some amazing stuff this year. I think the highlight of this year with Knights had to be Armihan's fight with Charlotte. Man, what a insane encounter that was. I remember when this was first releasing and we got to see the sketch pages, it was so cool. Because Armihan's story touches upon so many interesting themes about colonialization, about your culture being destroyed, and her having to reconcile with that fact. And the way she chooses to reconcile with it is by having beef with the Queen, which is insane. It reminds me a lot of Zoro vs. Mihawk, where it is this immensely powerful, immensely more proficient figure facing off against an adversary who they do not take seriously in the slightest at the beginning, and then gain respect for over the course of the fight as their opponent gets progressively more and more ensconced, basically. Because Armihan is rightfully pissed that Charlotte's family basically destroyed her home, presumably ruined her family and her culture, and now she just has to kind of live with that. And yeah, the way that this is drawn, particularly with Armihan's electricity and storm powers, oh, it's so beautiful. You really get this sense that she is putting everything on the line. She does not care if she lives or dies from this. She just needs to take Charlotte down in her mind. It's such a insane set of scenes. and I absolutely loved it. But I think the most interesting thing is the bits that you can get about Charlotte from this. Because at first it seems almost like she's doing this not out of obligation, but almost as a toying with her food kind of thing. Like, she's just doing it as a sort of way to kind of gratify herself. But you sort of look a bit into it and it's like, okay, what is she thinking here? Because she doesn't need to do this. She is recovering from a battle and preparing for another raid on the tree. So it's like, okay, what exactly is her plan here? And you kind of come to realize she just adores battle. Like, she has this glint in her eyes, the way she's talking about Amihan, the way she's moving, it comes from this pure ascending feeling of combat to her. And that is fascinating, because as these chapters were releasing and as these pages were releasing, I remember me and some of the others were discussing this sort of question of why did she accept the duel. And I think one of the interesting points of view, which I didn't even consider, was suggested by someone else, I might be able to find the comment, was basically this idea of, what if Charlotte is kind of testing her mettle against what is ostensibly like her prize or her victim, because that is what Amihan is. This is rage against the crown personified in this young, angry person who wants things to change for the better. And then the fallout of this fight, the way that Charlotte offers to make Amihan a knight on the spot, and you see all of the different reactions. Like, Takezo looks like he's kind of annoyed, or kind of like rolling his eyes at this. Like, I don't know whether this is implying that Charlotte has done something like this before, but it's such a little bit of impulsivity from her, which is so different. And of course, Samson is absolutely torn up about this, because his best friend almost got killed by the queen because, you know, she picked a fight. Like, that's insane. And Blank sort of has this sort of quietness about it. I mentioned it in my previous video about Knights, that Blank has this really interesting kind of quietness about his character. You can't really tell what he's thinking sometimes, and you just kind of have to read into his emotions. And it was so interesting. And yeah, Samson got some amazing stuff this year. Snowy got some amazing stuff this year. I think that plot thread of his erase power, the magic to basically atomize something, that has so much potential in so many different ways it could end up going. And I think you can look back on a lot of Samson's behavior and you can see why his power doesn't manifest as strong as it does when Snowy uses it. Because Samson is a very reserved person, I suppose is the best way I can put it. He wants to be polite, he wants to get along with everyone. And as a result, any feelings of kind of frustration at himself or the world seem to have kind of been pushed down a lot for him, so he doesn't express it as much. And when it does get expressed, it's kind of harmful. Like when he blows up at Amihan, basically saying, I was terrified of losing you, why would you do a stupid thing like that? And I'm really glad that they, you know, they make up and stay friends. But it does make you realize, damn, Samson is still like the most volatile, like, Chekhov's gun in this entire story. And then yeah, Snowy and Soichiro, them both getting to try and sort of guide Samson in their own ways is so beautiful. Soichiro is just so chill about everything. Like, Snowy is like a panicking mess thinking, oh my god, my friend might die, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like he might explode or something. And then Soichiro is just like, yeah, but it's magic, it's okay. Like, he has this disarming presence that is just so, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's always so good. Oh, and oh my goodness, and I just remembered, oh my god, it's Mortimer? Let me double check. I don't want to misremember his name. Yeah, this was also the year we get introduced to Mortimer, the absolute bird goat, I guess? Oh man, I love Mortimer. He is such a funny little guy, and it's so sweet that after Snowy ends up, confessing that she loves Sho and that she wants to, like, be together with her, and then Sho kind of rejects her before, it's a whole thing. But Mortimer is just there throughout all of it, just being a supportive little guy. He's just an eccentric little weirdo, and I love that. He just wants to try his best, and he's got this, like, pomposity about him. Like, he's kind of a bit of a cartoon character, and he seems to have this kind of fake antagonism / friendly sort of rivalry with Snowy that is just so charming to behold. This story is just such, like, I'm smiling as I'm saying this, like, it's so charmingly written. All of the characters are charming. Blank had his birthday today. Well, not today, but he had it in this year. He had it in one of the chapters. And he gets given a giant sword. It's, man. I know that this is the sort of definitive, we are in peak ramble hours. Oh man, I absolutely love this story. I'm super curious to see where we're gonna go as Hellcomb begins to sort of draw to its final act. Because on one hand, I feel like there's something there going on with why the Queen wants the sap and what kind of war conflict that she's trying to supply with that. But then there's, like, other things of, like, okay, what if we end up switching point of view? What happens if we lose a character? Because as much as the raid on the tree, it was brutal, none of the characters died. And I'm slightly scared that, in the coming chapters, someone is gonna end up, biting the dust. It's such a tantalizing series. I wish the best for Knights. And yeah, Looney also recently released a music video plus a little animation. Oh man, it is beautifully done. It was so cool just seeing him chip away at this massive project, and it just, it captures the feeling of the art without necessarily directly being a one-to-one recreation. It plays to his strengths as a artist who knows how to use a lot of color, dynamism, motion, facial expressions. I'm gonna stop myself fairly soon because I need to talk about the other stories. Megalobox Nomad. Okay, so last year I'd finished Megalobox Season 1, and I was wondering, where do we go from here? Because everything seemed to be fairly neatly tied up. And then I began Megalobox Nomad, Megalobox Season 2, whatever you want to call it. And oh man, it starts off so bleak. And the way it shifts this world from one which is, it's hostile and it beats people down and it doesn't really allow for upwards mobility, but it still felt grounded in a certain amount of anime-ness, if that makes sense. It felt fair. There was a progression that you can sort of imagine for Joe. But when this season begins, Joe is at rock bottom. He has lost ties with Sachio. He lost his mentor, and he is suffering massively physical and mental anguish, basically, where he's basically just fighting as a sort of self-punishment, I suppose. And then, as the story continues, you get these interesting, like, peaks and valleys, and it kept me guessing as to, okay, is this going to have a happy ending? Because the first few episodes are so dire that it kind of made me worry, is Joe just gonna end up dying by the end of this? Because he is pushing himself, and it's just not gonna work. But then he meets Chief, and the story flips on its head. Joe is having to teach this older guy who loves his family and is wanting to provide for his community, and the two of them grow so much from being within each other's orbits. And it's so good. Chief is a phenomenal character for his ridiculously short period of time that he's in the story. And yeah, it's so sad to see him go, because he is one of those kind of characters who bursts onto the scene, you instantly kind of get a feel for the guy and realize he is just a nice, solid person who wants to do best for everyone. And then Joe loses him, and Joe then has the choice of how does he want to proceed from here. And I love that what he chooses is to try and go back and face his past, to try and rebuild the bridge with Sachio and the other kids and Yuri and all of these people who he used to be so attached to that drifted away after the death of his mentor. I'm so sorry I can't remember his name. Oh man, it was lovely. And then the final few episodes, which are dedicated to Joe's fight with Mac, I believe his name was fantastic. I'm so glad that it ends up being a happy ending, because I can imagine a world where this series just ends absolutely dire, where this idea of a wandering nomad who doesn't have a place in the world cannot find a place. But this story, and in extension the kind of metaphor of the sort of nomad, I believe it was a hummingbird, it feels, I don't know how to put it, it's the most kind of deserty western feel for a story I've had in a long while, where there's this immense feelings of isolation, but also community and togetherness. It's really cool. Next up is Bagatto. Bagatto is Bagatto is a comic that I bought during the Shortbox comic event, I believe it was called. And basically Bagatto is, the closest thing I can describe it is sort of a version of kind of Macbeth or something, where you're witnessing a court being overthrown, but the presentation of it is insane. It feels like it's art from another world. I don't know how to describe it other than that. It feels so distinct and alien in how it is presented visually. Like, it's so abstract, metaphorical, and the titular sort of, I don't think the character's called Bagatto, but maybe they are. The titular sort of main character is this jester who is trying their best to kind of use these sort of dream prediction powers to help their king. But then this stuff sort of begins happening of like, okay, there's a plot to ruin the king, and it just goes in all of these weird tangential directions. And I was basically in a trance as I was reading this. It felt otherworldly, and that was like an insane experience. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to recapture that specific moment when I was just reading it and trying to interpret all of these kind of symbolic elements, these aspects of rebirth of the two princes growing up before their eyes and sort of being the embodiment of the main character's own inner demons, I suppose. There's a lot there, and I don't know if I would fully understand it even if I spent time to just sit down and absorb it. But it was a phenomenally done comic. I don't know if it's still available, because a lot of these comics made for the event were either timed releases or released in other forms later down the line. But yeah, what a story. What a story. In the same vein of slightly abstract, slightly dark stories, we have got The Woman Called Fujiko Mine. Okay, as Lupin the Third stories go, this one's so cool. Fujiko is probably my least favourite of all of the main cast, unfortunately. She's normally got the least going on, and even when she is interesting, it's only like tiny little nuggets. Fujiko Mine, Woman Called Fujiko Mine, changes this by posing the question of, what if Fujiko isn't the person we think she is? And that alone does so much to make me interested in her. And I think that it's kind of difficult to talk about this series without talking about the ending, so I would seriously suggest, if you haven't seen it, go check it out if you want. It is quite dark, and it has some slightly peculiar elements, but if you're willing to live with that, you can experience it. Check the trigger warnings, but yeah, I think I've stalled enough, so I think I can talk about the ending. The way this story builds up the mystery of Fujiko as this, you get the implication that she is this girl who has been trapped in this cycle of trauma and trauma response, and sort of loathing and loving the aspect of herself, the way she weaponizes her sexuality and things. I don't know how to put it. There's so much there that you can read into, particularly with the opening and the sort of the recital of Edgar Allan Poe, where she clearly holds some amount of resentment and love for her past. This cyclical cycle of thieving. Something about this story just flicked a switch in my brain that just made me want to analyze as much as I could. Because you can read so much into how Fujiko acts, and that makes the ending just hurt a bit, where it's revealed that no, Fujiko didn't have these experiences. It was a different character, and I don't know how I feel about that. On one hand, there's this very compelling thing of, here is an internal psychology of Fujiko that you can twist and interpret and sort of be curious about as to what in Fujiko's life caused her to have this extremely twisted worldview and this difficulty in healthily expressing herself. But then on the other hand, there is this kind of immutable fact that basically every character in the main Lupin cast are moldable archetypes. They don't have particularly defined histories, and even when you do define the histories, it's still kind of wishy-washy and vague. And that's kind of what Fujiko herself seems to settle on. She settles on this idea of, my past is my business, and you can't take that from me. You can't put your trauma onto me, you can't force me to be something I'm not. And then she does this quite unhinged thing, where she's, the main villain is this young girl who's immensely sick, and Fujiko brings her out of the castle that she's been in, and basically flaunts the fact that she is living her perfect life while this girl doesn't get that choice. I have no idea how to feel about all of this, because it is such a weird grey morality thing, and it does deflate my feelings towards it a little bit, because it's a shame that all of this amazing build-up is kind of pulled out from under you and you sort of said, no, this isn't Fujiko, this is this other character. And it's like, okay. And then there's this thing of the villain girl is basically living vicariously through Fujiko and the trauma, the different events that happens to her life. It's all kind of been orchestrated, and it's like, oh, that's a bit of a shame. So I think there's a lot that you can dig into there, and in some ways I do kind of wish the ending was different, but it did leave me with a lot to think about and a lot to digest about how I view these characters, because I think that often you do have to somewhat read between the lines and imagine your own stories a bit with the Lupin characters, because as much as there is a boatload of Lupin stuff, you still have to just sort of make your own interpretations based on the information that you're given. Yeah, I don't know, it's a weird feeling to be given the pieces of a puzzle and then later be told, no, that's not even the right puzzle. I don't know, it was an interesting anime, and I would love to see more character stuff like this in future Lupin stories. Next up is The Incredibles. Out of all of the Pixar filmography, Brad Bird's filmography, this is one of those ones where it's like, I've known about this for my entire life, I know it's good, I've just not got around to seeing it. And yeah, it is every bit as incredible as everyone said it was. It's so cool. to have a story that focuses on like the mundanity, I suppose, of being a hero. Because I think a lot of stories focus on what it would feel like to be in a power fantasy, what it would feel like to be in a story where superheroes are as bold and comic-like as they are in the sort of classic depiction of superheroes. Incredibles takes this really fun direction of, what if there are superheroes, there are people born with these exceptional powers, and then they're barred from doing it. And then they have to live with the bureaucracy of, okay, you have to be a superhero in an urban environment, you're not allowed to use your powers, you have to live a normal life. You have to give up that core part of your identity. And I think there's so much, an interesting discussion there, where so much of this world is constructed to feel nostalgic. It's that retrofuturism look, the music, it's got very James Bond sort of feel. And you can understand why Bob wants to go back to those times. He wants to relive the glory days, basically. And I don't think that this story is trying to fully negate that feeling. It's more so punishing the fact that Bob wants to do this without his family. That he wants to experience the highs of being Mr. Incredible while forsaking everything else in his life. And I think that's where this discussion that the film has about being special is really interesting, because I remember the speech where it's sort of Bob and Helen arguing in the middle of the film, where Bob is like, oh, but they're making all of these ways for mediocrity to be celebrated and true excellence to not be. And it's really interesting because on one hand, this is an incredibly privileged worldview that Bob has, where he thinks people who are genuinely super should be given the chance to be super. But he also seems to view himself almost as better than others. But I think that what Helen ends up kind of explaining to him, and Bob learns throughout the story, is he has to value his family. These are the people who made his life good, even through the worst of times. But at the same time, it is also saying you don't need to let go of the glory days. You can do it in a new form. I think that's a big part of why his outfits as well are also still sort of... Bob still looks like Mr. Incredible, but his colours, his logo, they're all different. They're more sort of sleek and they're more bold. And in many ways that works quite well, because it's a sign that the Incredible family has grown. It's not just Mr. Incredible. It is all of them. And I don't know, there's something really fun about that. And Syndrome, I've not even talked about Syndrome yet. Syndrome is a great villain. He's not really a twist villain, I suppose. He kind of is, but I love that his entire motivation is this false heroism. He is a hero syndrome. It's literally hero syndrome. Where there's this idea of, I want the attention, the love, the praise, the adoration that superheroes get. But he has absolutely none of the morality. He has absolutely none of the altruism. And it's just such a interesting idea that he has become a weapons manufacturer and he wants everyone to be super. And in that pursuit, he sort of has this very hollow idea of what a hero is. He stumbles into things, he does all of these things in such a way that just makes him come across as just an absolute sleazeball, for lack of a better word. And I love that scene where Mirage basically says, hey, you cannot threaten the lives of children and stuff. Like, that's fucked up. You got to respect human life. That's not a sign of weakness. And I think in general, Mirage is just such an odd little character that makes the film feel more mature, because it has this question of, is Bob cheating on Helen? But also, there's the discussion of maturity in the sense of when they're all on the island and Helen is talking to the kids and saying, yeah, you know all of those stories about, heroes and villains and stuff. These guys are not like that. They aren't going to pull their punches, they are going to try and kill you. And, I don't know, moments like that are what make Radbird's films feel more than just stuff for kids. Like, they're still family entertainment, obviously, but it's that grounding in reality, for lack of a better way to describe it. This feeling that there are stakes and consequences for characters acting in these ways, and characters acting in ways which aren't typical of other kids' shows and things. It's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. Yeah. I don't know if I want to see the second film, because I've heard it's not very good. The Bad Guys 1 and 2. Man, The Bad Guys is so much fun. I have not had this much fun with an animated action film in such a while. There's, I don't know, it taps into the heist film, Lupin the Third, action stuff that I just absolutely adore. The Bad Guys 1 is probably a better story, but I like The Bad Guys 2 more. The Bad Guys 1 has a lot of action set pieces, and it has this very distinct vibe in the way that motion is exaggerated and almost cartoonified. It's so much fun, and The Bad Guys 2 in many ways amps it up to 11. There's more anime references, there is a more bombastic plot, and whilst there are more bad guys, more antagonists, I think that I vastly prefer Kitty and her crew over Marmalade. He's just kind of there, I'm sorry. I love Richard Ayoade's voice, he's just not a great fit for me. And yeah, I think Bad Guys 2 does so much to expand on the concept, because the first film is all about this idea of, okay, why are the bad guys bad? Is there a way that they can change? But then the second film brings this kind of dark mirror into the story by having Kitty, who has never been understood, never changes, and facing that with Wolf, who is on this kind of weird middle ground where he wants to be accepted and he wants people to accept him because he has changed, but no one quite does. And he then gets tempted back to being a crook. And I think it's really telling that he ends up getting to stick to his guns and be like, no, I don't want to be feared, I want to be loved. And the way to be loved is to not be a crook. Like, it's a simple story, but it works really, really well as it. And the fights, I cannot get over how good the fights and the chases are. Particularly the launch sequence where they're running on top of the rocket ship, and the zero gravity fight. Man, they are really cooking with these films. My only hope is that we do get more, but I have a hunch that because they're kind of getting further away from the premise of these guys are criminals, I have a feeling it might not hit quite the same as these two films. But yeah, it was great. I had fun. Chainsaw Man. Chainsaw Man is such an odd story to me. It has these really high highs and then these weird dips. This is mainly due to the fact that the weekly reading experience feels so quick. These chapters go by fast. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just so odd when there's, quite dense chapters in other series. And then in a Chainsaw Man chapter, maybe 2 or 3 things at most happen, but they happen in a way that fits the story. But, man, you cannot talk about Chainsaw Man Part 2 without talking about Chapter 167. Once again, spoiler warning for this series, and also going to put up a trigger warning, because, I'll put the trigger warning on screen, and then I'll talk about it in a second. So Chapter 167 is the chapter where Denji gets sexually assaulted by Yoru. Oh god, what a horrible chapter, man. Like, I don't know how to put into words how horrible it feels to experience this bit of the story. Because in one way, it is Fujimoto looking me dead in the eyes and saying, you think that this story is comfortable? I'm going to prove to you that this story still has that same uncomfortable factor that got you hooked in the first place. Because I think Fujimoto is really good at depicting the human experience in these very twisted ways. And yeah, this chapter exemplifies that perfectly to me. Because this is Yoru using her twisted affection for Denji and basically just ruining him at one of his lowest points. And the fact that things just keep getting worse for him before and after this. It's this exploitation of his sex drive in such a horrendous way, I think. Because we've had characters before this take advantage of Denji, but never have they been so transparent in their intent than Yoru. Because Yoru does not care. And I mean that in the sense of she does not care how she looks. She simply feels things emotionally. And if she wants to be angry, she'll shoot something. If she wants to feel good, she'll do whatever it is that makes her feel good. And because of that, she has zero consideration for anyone's boundaries. And it's so gross to think about. And yeah, just in general, this has been the portion of the story where Yoru has been flourishing into this antagonistic figure. Because, yeah, as much as there are these very kind of real depictions of this kind of very personal, very ugly intimacy, for lack of a better word, we then contrast that with what is going on in the current story, where Yoru is getting everything she ever wished for, and she is getting more and more ensconced by Denji. Because she has got her war, she's got her endless war, she's got nuclear weapons, because America reinvented them. And then she doesn't get what she feels she deserves, because death has been eaten, so she's lost one of her sisters, she's lost the ability for there to be such thing as loss, or at least loss in the same way that she would have experienced it before. And then Denji just keeps mocking her. And honestly, as much as I'm not a big fan of Chainsaw Man's fights, because it's just not really what I come to the series for, him using the scissors to kind of to functionally win and beat her and get this power boost is so interesting. Because yeah, everything about the fight has been twisting this idea on its head, where instead of Denji being the typical shonen hero, giving the power of friendship speech, this idea that I've grown, I've changed, I've become a better, more individual person, it's Yoru doing that. Yoru is the one saying, yes, it is me, I have experienced all of these lovely bombs and hardships, and I have become the perfect hero of my own delusional story. And Denji is playing the villain so hard that it's so funny. He is, he's using Yoru's allies we've never seen before as meat shields, and she's getting so torn up about the idea of killing the moray eel. It's so funny. And yeah, he just keeps doing this. He's like, oh, I know, I'm going to begin eating these devils, yum yum yum, you better give Asa back. And Yoru is getting so furious that the expressions literally don't look right on Asa's face. And then there is the whole thing of Asa being the reason her father died. Ooh boy. Okay. I still don't know how to sort of square all of these aspects of the story and how they're all tied together. She's got these parents who seem to hate each other. Her mother functionally killed her father after he was attacked by a devil, and she tripped trying to find the devil hunters. And then there's just the phrase that her mother says, which is still like so gross and sad. Your father was cheating on me. He deserved to die, or words to that effect. And the insurance would be better if he was dead rather than just losing a leg. And it's like, oh. Everyone that Asa knows seems to have exploited... They've exploited their relationship with her, basically. And it's so sad that she has to hold this immense amount of guilt. Because it seems that whether or not she trips on purpose after this, I think she's built up this connection in her mind of, I trip at the worst possible moments, and that kind of puts her in this loop of her tripping causes more bad things to happen, and this kind of self-hatred to kind of manifest and keep rolling. But yeah, I don't know, there's something very sweet about Denji earnestly accepting her and saying, yeah, I killed my dad too, we're both parent killers. And then them getting to laugh about it, and for Pochita to kind of subtly imply he wants to make a world which is better, and a world which can accommodate for people like Denji and Asa. That's a really, really sweet sentiment, and I honestly don't know what to expect from the rest of Chainsaw Man. Are we going to get a part 3? Is the world going to be recovered? I do not know. I expect that death and the prophecy are going to come back into play, but I don't know. I really don't know. And yeah, Chainsaw Man is a weird old series. Excited to see more, slightly scared to see more, and yeah, the anime is going to be doing International Assassins, so that's going to be really cool. Ninjago Dragons Rising Season 3. Oh boy, Ninjago Dragons Rising. I have had such a difficult time fully squaring how I feel about Ninjago recently, because we have had more proof than ever that this series is just going to keep going on, and that's cool. But Ninjago's Dragons Rising is such a weird mixed bag at the moment. See, one of the big things I was excited for in Season 3 was Aaron and Raz separating off and there being some kind of bond there. And to its credit, this season did a fantastic job with the time that we were given with them. I like that this story doesn't make Aaron evil, quote-unquote evil, because I think that would have been the easiest choice, and I'm glad they didn't go with it. Aaron still feels like his old, kind-hearted self. It's just that he is now working with Raz, and I think that's a bit of nuance that particularly younger audiences might not fully understand at first, but I like how it proves that Aaron is still the same person at his core. And just in general, I think seeing the contrast between how Raz treats Aaron and how Lloyd and the others treat Aaron has been fantastic. And this sort of twisted dragging along that Raz has, where he is constantly stringing Aaron along saying, remember, this is all for your parents, you want to get your parents back, you gotta stick with me. And there's these moments where he just breaks character and just goes off, and it's so interesting. Like the moment where they're arguing about like the ninja, and Aaron's like, oh, but the ninja help people, and Raz just says, well, they abandoned me, or words to that effect, and it makes you think, well, what did he go through for him to hate the ninja like this? Was it the fact that he is presumably one of the last of his tribe? Maybe. We genuinely don't know, and I think that they will remain some of my favourite bits of this story, because you see how Aaron has to kind of compromise his values to stick on this path that Raz gives him. And in many ways, that disconnects them from the main plot of the season a bit. And that's okay, it's just a bit peculiar. I think that the integration of Morrow is really cool. I like how he is not even named, I think. He's this ghostly warrior, he's protecting spirits going into the afterlife, and he just expresses regrets about Wu. And I love that. He's not there to teach Aaron, oh, this is the right way, this is the path you should go on. He just says, yeah, I get it. Masters are important. Do what you can to help your master. It's just a shame that he doesn't really have much of a purpose after that. He kind of gets absorbed and then vanishes for the rest of the season. But I think if we are going to get more legacy characters, that is the way to do it. You don't need to draw attention to them as much as you might with a main character. And yeah, I really, really love what they did with Aaron and Raz here. Because Aaron gets so much, he gets to prove his worth twice, defeating Thunderfang twice, and that's awesome. And I also really like the moment where Egalt passes on. Genuinely, I did not know that they would do this. I would not have expected this in a million years, but Egalt passes away from the wasting sickness. And maybe they were more willing to kill him off because he was already stated to be in a bad state and he was already stated to be dying. But man, I do think that it's a shame that this seems to be the only time that they've been willing to remove a character from Ninjago's ever-growing sidecast. Because I think one of the biggest issues about this series is bloat. It is consistently growing and growing and growing, and I just think that there's too many characters. There's too many characters to give all of them focus. And I think that writing them out or putting them in the background is fine. And I just hope that the writing team are able to do that, because I don't know if they are, but I hope that they can. And then we get on to the weird bits of this season. Thunderfang and the Forbidden Five are probably the poorest written elements of this entire season. Thunderfang's plan basically comes down to him being like, free me please, also I'm going to get a bunch of souls. And that's all he does. He doesn't have anything else to do, he just sort of stands around and gloats. And that could be really interesting. I think his introduction scene is some of the most characterization he's given, where it's this idea of, ah yes, I'm the master Machiavellian schemer, I can decide your fate, and I've planned all of this, it has been preordained. And then nothing really comes of that. He believes in his own hype, but that's all he really has. And the Forbidden Five just go from potentially really interesting villains in their own right to lackeys. Like, they're mostly silent, they barely have any characterization, they barely have anything to do, and it sucks, because I do like the moments when they are given stuff to do. I think that Rox is this kind of very self-centered sort of egotist. Noct had his stuff in the previous season, but the rest of them are just so nothing, and it's a shame because they look amazing. They have these interesting powers, and yeah, they just don't get to do much. Similar issue with the Draconians. You know, I'm not gonna stress too much about it. It is what it is. They're the foot soldiers, whatever. But then there's all of these other aspects of this season which feel slightly misplaced, but well-intentioned, if that makes sense. Stuff like the plotline with Lloyd. It feels very disconnected from what his previous seasons were about. If it was sort of laser-focused on, Aaron is gone, what should I do, the team is falling apart, that would have been really cool. But it was kind of this bit meandering, bit disconnected story. Zane and Pixel did not have a very good storyline at all, if I'm entirely honest. They were just kind of there. And then there was, like, these odd little bits where it's like, I think I liked them, but it was a strange place to put them. Like, the land of Ark is genuinely the most inventive thing Ninjago has done in years. This 1984 dystopian Truman Show-esque thing, which is run by a single person who's also a hive mind. That is like the premise of a Doctor Who episode. And the way they use Lee, you can tell they had an absolute blast writing and animating this guy. Like, they make a bunch of Lees duplicate themselves to make a giant fist, and it's just like, okay, they clearly loved this guy. And I think his story is very simple, very effective. Lee ends up becoming sort of a secondary antagonist. And I like it, but surely there was a different place that this could have been put. I don't know, it's tough. And then there's the elements with Jay. I think that a lot of this story boils down to this very simple back and forth between Nia and Jay of, oh, you're not who you said you were, and Jay's like, oh, yeah, I'm a evil bad guy now. I don't know, I feel like there's something missing there. I do really like his development, and I think him having this kind of darker edge, it gives him a very unique vibe compared to the rest of the Returning Ninja. And as for where I think the future of the story goes, I have no clue, dude. They've split up the characters, the council seem to have split up, the Dragon Council has split up, and Raz is now at the monastery and has captured Wu's spirit. What is he planning with that? No clue. There are some other elements of Raz and Aaron and Sora's story that I'd love to discuss a bit more. Maybe in a future video, maybe not. I think it's really bullshit how they solve the sacrifice situation, where it's implied one of you has got to go in this thing in order for us to get this dragon icon. And then, once Aaron and Sora leave, Raz just finds a random person and does it off screen. That was bullshit. I think that the way in which it's frustrating, because that's the one sticking point I have with the Raz and Aaron plotline. I love Sora coming in the second half and helping Aaron basically realize, no, this isn't the path I want. But yeah, there's some bits of this season that are just a bit peculiar to me. And I would love to see more of the positives, but, you know, I just don't want to... I don't want to completely ignore these negatives that have stuck around. Okay, next up, Ninjago Monstrosity. This was so cool. Ever since seeing Ninjago Golden Legend, I have been so curious to see whether we would get another 2D animated Ninjago bit. And lo and behold, we did. We got this short mini-series about Kai's journey through the land of monsters before meeting back up with Lloyd and the others. Despite this thing's short runtime, it does so much artistically and for Kai and the world. Oh, it's so cool. I think that already the gist of what this series is so different from regular Ninjago. It is this world which is explicitly a lot more brutal, a lot more violent, and even if we see very little of the actual violence on screen, the implications of a monster eating the dragon's child, or the previous Master of Fire basically abandoning his mech, trying to defeat a monster, or Kai almost being siren-songed by the idea of going back to his family. It's so good. 3 episodes this had, and every single one of them knocks it out of the park. They're visually inspired by Akira Kurosawa. You can see that through the black and white palette, but also just the way in which environments are used. The Land of Monsters feels so dire, and I think a large part of that is down to the black and white palette. But, you know, there's these giant monsters, there is constant fights breaking out. It really gives this sensation that Kai is at his wit's end. And in many ways, I do feel like it's a bit of a shame that this is tied to Dragon's Rising, because it feels so tonally different. And yeah, the whole thing of Kai struggling with this idea of keeping going, it is immensely cool. I really hope that they get to make more like this, because it is genuinely so much fun to just see Ninjago being reinterpreted through different lenses. I saw the TV glow. This was the first film that I saw in the year, and it was a really, really powerful experience. So, this was a recommendation by Trish and a few other friends of mine, and what I was told to do was try and just bundle yourself up with a warm blanket or something, watch it in the evening, lights off, and just let it wash over you. And yeah, I'm so glad I took that recommendation, because this was a magical little experience. It felt nostalgic for a time which I didn't live in. It's this story of the two main characters finding this old TV show, and it's deeply connecting to them and allowing them to explore their ideas of gender. And yeah, there's this kind of slow degrading, if that makes sense, of Owen, the main character's life. As he gets older, he gets more and more reserved and into his own shell, if that makes sense. Whilst Maddie, the other character, becomes super enamored with I Saw the TV Glow. Oh, not I Saw the TV Glow. The Purple Opaque, I think it was called. And eventually they have this reunion where there's this idea of, this is not the real world. The real world is the Purple Opaque. And oh god, it's so gutting, because the way they describe it, the way Maddie describes it in the sort of scene where the camera is just very slowly inching towards her in this sort of planetarium looking environment, it is genuinely one of the most haunting bits of dialogue I've seen. It was this idea of, this was our real world, then we got caught, our hearts were taken out of our chest, and we were buried. And the only way to go back is to bury yourself alive. That alone was like so striking, because as a metaphor for what transitioning can be for people, I think that is fascinating. It is really powerful stuff and makes you understand how someone might feel with that. This idea that your true self has been plucked out of you, that the only way to return to your true self is to bury your own sense of self, your own body, in order to be reborn. That was like so powerful that I remember just sitting in bed after watching it, just staring up at the ceiling thinking about it. And the ending is so tragic. It's the opposite of ending with a bang. It's a story that ends with a slow rise, as if something good is going to happen, and then it all comes crashing down and ends in a whimper. And it is gutting. It is genuinely quite upsetting in how Owen has basically a panic attack after, they have this panic attack, and then they go to the bathroom and have a moment to embrace their true self before once again shrinking in. It is genuinely like, as stories go, it is one of those ones which sticks with you. It's a story that is immensely powerful, and yeah, just visually it looks phenomenal. The lighting, the haziness sometimes. Superb film. Brave Animated Series Season 2. Man, Brave is one of those things which I did not expect would get a sequel. I am so glad it did, though. It has been really peak, but in a way that's different from Season 1. Because, I don't know, the best way I can put it is Season 1 had a very slow, methodical and quiet atmosphere, whilst this one felt a lot more bombastic and loud. You can already see in episode 1 how much lighting, characters, everything looks so much more professional. And yeah, just in general, I think that this series feels different. It feels like it's got a lot more weight behind it now. And whilst there's definitely some episodes which I think miss that feeling, in general, this feels like a development of this world rather than just trying to repeat the same beats that last season did. If I had to pick out a favourite episode, I would say that the one of the Lonely General and the Fire Demon were both really, really good. The Fire Demon is so cool as a minor character because he always seemed chill. And I think that this season really showcased his moral backbone compared to a lot of the other demons. Because a lot of the other demons feel like they've been pushed into a corner, so they have to fight. That's their only option in their mind. But the Fire Demon knows that this isn't right, because he is the embodiment of fire. He is perfectly aware of the ability of something to simultaneously provide warmth and comfort and safety, as well as having the ability to ruin things, because that's what fire is. And the way in which he sort of struggles against the mad god demon, he clearly like struggles to see this former friend and to kind of try and find his path forwards in life. And that is the case with a lot of these characters, because whilst there's some, like the hero brave, the main guy, the blue head guy, some of them have like perfectly slotted into their roles, others are struggling a lot more, such as Morwant. Morwant is still this fantastic character. His best stuff is still in season 1, but I love that he refuses to just be a warlord. He considers it, but then he realizes, wait, no, I'm a leader, and I need to think about what my people best deserve. And the thing he decides on is an election. And I think that that is probably the best solution he could have come to, because at least then it won't be on the shoulders of him. It's not just the shoulders of one person. It is the collective community's choice. Do we attack? Do we hold back? What do we do? And that's really cool. Dragon Brave did some incredible stuff this season, and I think that a lot of her content showcases that she is a true hero. She tries her absolute best to save people and care for them, even when they clearly have no respect for her. And I think this was best exemplified in the Sorry Brave episode, the one with the train dangling over the cliff. That was such a fun episode, and in many ways that is a sort of the entire story in miniature. It is people who have been impacted by fear and being scared, and they don't trust anyone other than themselves. And it is is a group effort that is required to kind of bring everyone back together. And I love the character of Sorry Brave, because he is such a spineless little loser who just wants to retire. And it is so funny that the thing that helps bridge the gap between the people infected with this sort of fear virus and the heroes trying to save them is him just bowing down and apologizing and putting all of the stress and blame onto himself. Like, what a lovely little fella that guy is. It's great. And the Lonely General. Wow, the art design in the Lonely Generals episode was fantastic. we have these brief sort of montage flashes of the general's sort of history and flashbacks, and they're done in this beautiful 2D painterly style. And the way that it cuts between that and the present day of the general sort of stumbling around trying to make sense of his surroundings and his past, it was all really powerful stuff. And the way in which he ends up being saved by Chief Brave, same with Library Witch, it's I don't know, there's something really powerful about how the lonely general doesn't want to be a soldier, but he has been transformed into that. And that's it's just such a sad bit of storytelling. But I've really enjoyed myself with Brave Season 2. It was really fun. The Lion King. This was probably the easiest 5 stars I've ever done. The Lion King is basically just everything that you want to come out of a Disney film. I went in assuming, okay, this is basically just going to be Macbeth, but with lions. Sure, that sounds cool. Instead, what we get is this very interesting meditation on the idea of responsibility, the idea of the circle of life, the growing up, and the guilt that comes with Simba feeling, I'm responsible for my father's death, and how does he deal with it? Because Pumbaa and I can't remember the other guy's name. The animals that he meets who sing Hakuna Matata. There we go. They both preach this idea that, yeah, you don't really need to care. All of that stuff, yeah, that's in the past, and we don't care about it. And at that moment, that's what young Simba needed to hear. He needed something to help ground him. But then as he grows older, he never grows out of that mindset. And it's only once he is kind of implored by his own people, hey, we need you back, man, that he actually gets to face that, both literally and metaphorically. Because, I don't know, it's a really, really well done film. It's a simple message executed perfectly. Animation-wise, absolutely beautiful. I particularly like how Scar sounds and looks, and Rafiki's animation. I think Scar is just such an effective villain. Man, I love Scar as a villain. Because as villains go, he is fairly, I don't know, I don't want to say that he's simple or complex, because he is kind of a mix of both. Because on one hand, he is just vengeful. He just wants power. But on another hand, it's so interesting because it's not even like he has any genuine complaints about how Mufasa rules. He doesn't have any principles as to why he would be a better ruler than Mufasa. It is purely an ego thing, where he wants to be on top, and he wants Mufasa to be below. And he doesn't even necessarily want to be a good ruler, he just wants to rule. And this is shown by how much the country deteriorates under Scar's leadership. Because he isn't a leader, he's just not a good suit for it. He rules by fear, he doesn't provide, he seems to either know about his weaknesses and chooses to just ignore them, or he just is blindly unaware of how much he sucks, for lack of a better word. I keep using that phrase, I need to stop using it. So yeah, I really like The Lion King. It is easily one of my favourite Disney films I've seen. Very easy 5 stars. 12 Angry Men. Oh boy, if we want to talk about unexpected favourites, 12 Angry Men blew me away. I'm talking about the original version, by the way, and not the remake. I've not seen that one. 12 Angry Men is a morality tale. It's very similar, at least in my mind, to things similar to Inspector Calls, where it's this idea of how do we as a society want to treat the justice system. In Inspector Calls, the main aspect of it is, how do we treat individual and collective responsibility? And in this, the question is, how do we do our due process to make sure that a man or a boy, in this case, on trial, how can they be treated fairly? How can we treat them with due respect and with the dignity they deserve? Because I love how the entire events of this film take place in a singular room, basically one room. There's like 2 scenes outside of it. And it is so simple in the setup of, there are 12 men, 11 of them say, yep, we should get rid of the boy, have it be done with. And one guy has doubts, so he says, no, I don't want to do that yet. And then they begin to unravel and unpack these 12 different people and question, why is it that you picked what you picked? What grounds did you choose that? And for some of the characters, it is bias. That is what several of the jurors do it on, whether that is racial bias or personal sort of baggage that has leaked into how they view the case. But then there's other characters who are viewing it purely analytically, like the guy with the glasses is unconvinced for most of it, but that's because he isn't swayed by the emotive arguments. He is purely thinking, in a factual term, is there room for me to doubt? And I don't know, there's something so fantastic about how you just watch these men unravel and change and in many ways reveal their true colours. Because there's some of these people who are absolutely just horrendous or just have no morals, but then others are very principled, but it takes a while for them to truly sort of say, actually, yeah, I'm going to say it with my whole chest, I believe this man, or I think that this boy should be saved. And yeah, I love how ambiguous the ending is. We're never told whether the boy did it or not. We're never told whether or not it's a good thing that they gave him another chance at life and voted him innocent. And I love that, because I've read a little bit about it afterwards. Apparently in a real justice system, this probably wouldn't fly. It would probably be seen as way too circumstantial. But I love that there is this degree of understanding of, we should not just choose to criminalize everyone. We need to take into account situations. We need to have empathy. Oh, it was so good. I really, really liked it. Next up is Pink by Koyasu Okazu. Okay, so Pink is a story that was recommended to me, I can't remember by who, I think it might have been by Finn. And as stories go, this was an interesting one, because it's got such an odd, unconventional tone and pacing. Because the first few chapters, you get introduced to the main character. So, when we're introduced to the main character, Yumi, she is a prostitute, but she also works in an office by day. And when she comes back to her apartment, she has an alligator. Sorry, a crocodile, not an alligator. She has a crocodile just living in her house. And from my understanding, Yumi is an incredibly free-spirited character, and it's almost like dangerously free-spirited, because she is just so flippant towards social norms and any sense of restraint. Because when she was a child, she was just like, hey, I want a crocodile. And she was given a crocodile. And she's been feeding this crocodile boatloads of food and just kind of living her life. And yeah, the way that this story kind of meanders, because it is a meandering story, it sort of goes in waves, it sort of wanders about. We get introduced to other characters, but this core of Yumi just kind of doing whatever the hell she chooses to do. That is like the core of this story. And by the end, it gets so dire. Like, her life basically falls apart. And then near to the end, she just sort of has this speech where she's like, I'm terrible, aren't I? This terrible thing has happened to me. All of these terrible things are happening to me. And I'm sad about it, and then I just move on. And it's clear that there's a bit of self-awareness there, that she is a character who just kind of lives life. She's very free-spirited, very reckless, and in many ways she's very absent-minded, because even when she's daydreaming about sort of travelling abroad and things, she's kind of not picking up on context clues of your life is still falling apart. And I don't know, Pink is one of those stories that you just sort of need to experience because it's so personal, I suppose. And from my understanding from the author's notes, the author, she is incredibly critical towards capitalism and social sort of expectations. And I think in many ways, the characters in this are kind of there to kind of be like, okay, let's put a lens to this and explore what would a character who is so absent-minded but also so enamored with the idea of money, what would they do to do that, and what does that kind of cause them to be? It was a really interesting read. I cannot say for certain what exactly it was about, but that's kind of what I got from it. Next up, the Team Fortress 2 Comics. So this released on like Christmas Day last year, so I didn't manage to fit it into my video. But this was the final concluding chapter of the Team Fortress 2 Comics, which had been ongoing for ages. And I'm so glad that this story finally got a chance to end, because that cliffhanger before was nasty. And yeah, man, it's been a while since I've read it, but it still sticks in my mind. I love how, in many ways, this was an anticlimax. The big bombastic battles and things that you'd expect from a TF2 comic, that is all behind us. Instead, this bit of the story was about Miss Pauling, the mercenaries, and the administrator kind of just coming to a conclusion, because we learned that what the administrator's been doing has been just keeping one of the Mann family alive to basically just torment him. And the implication is something horrible happened to the administrator's family, but it happened so long ago, and she's probably spanned so many lies about why she's doing this. Even she can't seem to remember what the thing that began her on this quest of vengeance is. She just knew, I have to get back at the Mann family. I want to make them suffer eternally. And man, isn't that so sad and so fascinating that someone would spend lifetimes, because she's extended her own life as well as the Mann family's, extended her life to torture them to the point where she doesn't even remember why she's doing this. Like, that's so powerful. And I find it so cool that even when she's given the question, even when Pauling sort of is given the sort of question, did you find more Australian? And she does have some. She has the choice. Do you let a monster like this continue to torment a man for no reason, or do you break the cycle? And Pauline says, no, I don't have any more. And you just watch the administrator's face just change to something like solace. This idea of, oh, I guess it's over. I guess there's nothing more to be done. And she just gives this most horrible, devious smile. And she says, all of that pain, all of that suffering, every second of it was worth it. and she dies happy. It's like, oh man, what a fantastic end to a fantastic villain. And yeah, then there's this really sweet epilogue where Pauling is given the question by the engineer of, okay, you know, Manco's back in business, all of this stuff's happening, what do we do with the remaining Australian? Because every single character we've seen has suffered from obsession with it. Anyone who gets their hands on this stuff and knows what it does, it makes them go crazy. Because it is such an alluring prospect. The idea of infinite life, the idea of reinvention. And I love that there's this brief second of Pauline being like, maybe I should use it. Like, there's a moment, like a single panel of her being tempted. But then she says, no, we gotta put it in the trench. And the engineer looks so relieved about it. And then the actual epilogue scene is beautiful. I think that Team Fortress 2, in many ways, is a weird, dysfunctional family. I know that's cheesy, but that's what they are. They are these weirdo mercenaries who have all of these eccentricities and oddities, and they're together at a Christmas or Thanksgiving dinner, and you get to sort of watch the perspective of someone. I don't know whether it's just meant to be the viewer or some other character, but you get sort of brought into the Scout's house as you learn a bit about what's happened to all of these characters. Like, the Scout's got a family, the Spy's mellowed out, and then you get the final spread of all of them saying thank you, and all of them just having a lovely time at a Christmas table. Fuck, man. It's just perfect. Even if there is more TF2, which I highly doubt, that is the perfect end to this story. This idea that, yeah, this is a family, and things did turn out okay. It is such a beautiful, beautiful ending. I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay, we're almost at the end now. Next up is Nichijou. This is technically me cheating because I haven't finished Nichijou, but man, Nichijou is the awesomest, coolest little show I've seen in ages. It is a comedy anime, and if you haven't heard of it, I don't know how. It's pretty famous. Nichijou is so much fun because it just embraces that it's a comedy. It is about just regular people, also a robot. Just roll with it, it's fun. And they sell every joke with their chest puffed out. They say the joke with their whole chest, and it is so good all the time. It made me burst out laughing so many times when watching. I've been watching it with my housemates, and man, it has just been the most fantastic little series. I think that my favourite character is probably Nano. And that's because Nano kind of has the emotional core of the story to me. Because even though this is a comedy anime and a lot of it is just kind of slice of life silliness, Nano has this really interesting story where, because she's a robot and because she looks so normal outside of her giant stupid cartoon cogwheel, she wants to be normal. And in many ways she is terrified, mortified like to the bone, that the idea that she could be outed as a robot. And I just find it so charming that even though she is in her own head like this, it makes her blind to the fact that absolutely everyone in this town is fucking nuts. Everyone in this town is a weirdo goofball in some way, shape or form. Like, we've got, I'm trying to remember all the main characters' names. We've got the teachers who are like, one of them's incredibly meek and quiet, who cannot shout at all. We've got the other teacher who is obsessed with his love interest, and just says the most unhinged shit sometimes. We've got the tsundere girl, we've got the professor, who is just adorable. Oh god, we've got Yuko, we've got, there's so many good characters in this. I absolutely love it. And yeah, I think my favourite scene is probably the argument between Yuko and Mio, where Yuko has given Mio the wrong dish or something, and the two of them just fucking lambast each other. It's so over the top, and Nano's just like, oh my god, what are they doing? And it just keeps getting more and more and more absurd, until it reaches a point where both of them have been so, like, cartoonishly bitter at each other, like, poking at each other's insecurities, that it loops round to them just being incredibly wholesome, of like, oh, I can't believe it, you're such a good person, why can't you see that? And then they, like, both, like, calm down and have this amazing handshake. It's so much good. I love this show and its characters, and it's just such a vibe to be there. The art is beautiful, and whilst I've only seen a few episodes of City, I like City's art design as a whole more. It feels more in tune with what the mangaka has been creating. But Nichijou feels even better just to look at and sort of see. The environments are superb, and the character designs and the animation, they go so hard on it. Oh, I love this show. It's genuinely one of my favourite shows of all time, I think. It is just fun from start to end. There's never a bad episode, if that makes sense. It's all bangers all the time. Okay, and now it's time to talk about the final story of the day. One Piece. Oh man, One Piece is a fantastic story. It is a story which has formulas and a structure that you can somewhat predict, but the actual minutiae of what One Piece has become always keeps you on your toes. Even if you feel like you've got Oda figured out, he always manages to find ways to surprise you. This year has been crazy for One Piece, because just oh my god, I'm just trying to think about everything. So I'm pretty sure in either January or March we got the mural, which has been the most mysterious, the most fascinating bit of lore that we've had in a long while. It does so much to suggest things about how the world works, what this sort of cycle of history is like, the descriptions of the first, second and third worlds. I absolutely adore what that mural does, because it just sparks a sense of curiosity and whimsy in this world that I sort of think I might have lost at some point. But it reignites that. It's just clear enough that you can make an interpretation without it being definitively 100%, oh yeah, this is exactly what happens. And I love that, because it ties into the Harley being this book of interpretations, similar to like the Bible or another religious text, where you can, so many people have so many different interpretations of what it means and what Nika means. And just like the Giants, we're having to face that reality with the mural. And this is also the year that we saw, it's the year that we saw the Gods Knights doing their thing. It's the year that we saw Emu bodyjack Gunko, and the Gunko Brook connection, which is nuts. And we got the flashback. What? That's crazy, man. This series is so cool, and I'm so surprised at how much we got to learn about the history between Harold and Rox in particular. I love both of them as characters. I think that Rox's legacy is one of erasure. It's one of him having his impacts on history minimized and forgotten by all but his most devoted. And that's so insane to think about. Like, imagine... Because I think the way I've described it to people is, imagine someone 60 years ago in real life just being completely forgotten. It's kind of crazy to think about. And I think that the way in which it's done really showcases how big a person Rox was, despite his fairly small stature comparatively to the rest of his crew. He was a single man who killed an admiral, leapt from Mary Joa, and formed the most deadly crew on the sea. Like, that is legendary by One Piece standards as well. And the way in which he has this very grey morality, where he has undoubtedly done bad things. He hurt Loki just to get to talk to his father. Like, that is not the sign of a perfectly moral sort of beacon. But he's also done so many good things, and it's clear that, at least in part, Rox wants the world to change. Whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, that is entirely up to you to think. But he wants the world to change, and he wants Harold by his side, and he hates that Harold cannot see that he is being used and abused by the world government, and he will never get what he wants. And yeah, Harold is such an unfortunate figure too, because he is so sacrificial in the way he treats himself, and he wants to sacrifice the past of Elbaf in order to secure its future. And that's such an interesting conflict, and I think it's way more interesting than the way that people were discussing this conflict when the arc first began, because I think there's a very dangerous precedent if you view it as, Harold made the country weak and soft and made them all not into warriors, and it's like, no, Harold wanted to destroy a stigma, but he swung way too far in the opposite direction and basically put the onus of being violent onto himself and onto Loki. He's basically forcing these stereotypes to a smaller subsect rather than the culture as a whole. And I don't know, there's something fascinating about the way Loki has to kind of grapple with everything that's happened in life and, you know, the decisions of his father. And yeah, God Valley was awesome. I don't know, in some ways it's a bit sad that it ruins the mystique now that we know what happened there, but at the same time it's like, all of these legends were clashing, and Kaido got his fruit, and Emu was there. It's like, whoa, that's bonkers, dude. And yeah, I genuinely don't know what to say about One Piece, because it's just that cool. And I genuinely don't know where the story is going outside of, I think that Haruden and Loki are going to they're going to reconcile in some way. I don't see Loki being a villain after so much time in the spotlight. I think he is going to be some variant of an ally, even if he's not necessarily Straw Hat material. I don't really mind if he joins the crew or not. Would be cool if he does. Don't mind if he doesn't. But yeah, I genuinely don't know, and I think the thing I've settled on relates to the speech about the giants that I believe it was either Emu or Gunko gave, which was this idea of whoever has the giants will win this war. So what is the natural conclusion to that? Well, if you want to make things a bit interesting, I think that you fracture the giants. Maybe some of them will appreciate Luffy sticking his neck out and seriously trying to stop these things. Maybe some of them will except Loki. But I imagine that there's going to be at least some giants who get utterly crushed because their history has been eradicated. The library is burning. The children are still kidnapped from what I understand. The entire tree is burning too. And in general, it's just like, okay, you wouldn't blame people for giving up. And I don't know, I think it would be so fascinating if we have some people on the world government side who are basically being forced into it. You know, they're basically being terrorized and coerced and being told, hey, if you want to live, join us. It's like, oh man. And yeah, Luffy is undoubtedly gonna save the day, broadly speaking. I don't see how he's getting rid of Gunko at the moment. Like, unless Gunko flees or even leaves Gunko's body, I don't really see what Luffy's going to be able to do against Emu here. There's undoubtedly some hacky stuff that's going to get explained to sort of help deal with the regeneration and things, but yeah, it's been a crazy period of One Piece, and I'm so excited to see more. It's going to be nice to be able to go back to the present day. I'm curious to see if we'll get to see Loki's fruit soon, because I'm assuming we will. And yeah, I'm really excited for it. So, in the past few years that I've made these videos, I've tried my best to find some kind of theme. You know, I don't want to try and, you know, script these sections too much, but I wrote a little bit just to kind of try and jog my memory and ideas. And I guess, yeah, I hope that doesn't feel different just because my message feels a bit different this year. Because broadly speaking, this has felt like a year of endings. There's been a bunch of big milestones in my life, such as finishing university and other personal stuff. And yeah, broadly that stuff is behind me now. And now I'm having to take steps into the unknown. It's an exciting feeling, but also quite scary. And I think that's just part of how my life is now. And in general, I guess this is the kind of feeling that I imagine some years are just going to feel like. Because in terms of my media consumption, this was one of the few years where I only had like a few shows that I was like, yeah, I'm really excited for this one. There was To Be Hero X, there was Nichijou, and there was Land of the Lustrous. Outside of that, I've not had like things where it's like, I am dead keen to see these. And yeah, I guess in general, I want to try and make sure that I can move forwards. I enjoyed plenty of this stuff, and I feel super lucky that in the past few years I've had these big pieces of media that have impacted me super deeply. And I guess, I don't know, I want to try and live life outside of just a screen. I want stories to supplement my life rather than be a substitution for living. Witnessing all of these stories in a vacuum is fine, but I do want to make sure that I make memories with other people and build myself up outside of that. What do I like reading? What do I like creating? What kind of person do I want to grow up to be? There's, you know, a ton of questions I want to try and answer about myself, and yeah, I hope that this time next year, I can have the answers to some of those things. Alright, I think I've kept you long enough. I'll see you later.